Okay, so we have to start off with some unfortunate news, and
it is a sad day.
Yeah,
for private screening.
If you've ever kept up with this, which I mean, I'd be surprised if you did. Yeah, we have some unfortunate news that we need to share. In that we have lost 5 episodes of content.
Well, okay. This is my fault.
I mean,
you had your episodes converted into an acceptable format that wasn't an Audacity file. You sent them to me, and I had them. I had the Audacity project saved on my files, but I did not convert them. And so, when Audacity updated, when I approved the update, all of the projects were deleted in the update, I'm assuming. So now I just don't have them. So it would have just been Grant talking to himself.
I mean, that's me on a typical weekend, but I mean, yeah, but
Still.
Yeah, we've unfortunately lost a lot of stuff from 2022. I think we lost everything from 2022 because that kind of
I think so.
Yeah, because I mean, this is obviously our first episode of 2023, and I mean, we missed out some good ones. We lost Everything Everywhere All at Once, which we both said was like a 10 out of 10.
We'll get to it though for this.
Yeah, I mean,
right? not like a review.
Yeah, we're not gonna.
But we'll mention
it's not on the docket for today, but I mean, if we're lucky, we could definitely swing in some discussion about that a little bit at the start.
But lesson learned on my end. I will make sure that I avoid that from now on. Of course,
it's a learning experience. It's totally fine. I mean, clearly the good people, they of us like 6 subscribers, they clearly they were distraught.
Of course. But what's also worth mentioning is that if you've been keeping up with us throughout all of or everything, I suppose, we really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. This was going to be episode 11, but now it's episode 6, and the fact that, your understanding of it means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Dude, we got a nice viewer count. It's all thanks to viewers.
Not much has changed.
I mean, a year's gone by
since.
I mean, yeah.
That's not the biggest thing that's happening this episode because rather than try and retrace our footsteps, we figured it would just be better if we dived into the thick of things.
Yeah, just keep moving forward
and hit the ground running. Yeah.
And when you hit the ground running, obviously you want to do it really fast. You want to You want to make sure you're
flash by, so to speak.
I mean, you already led there.
I think so.
But yeah, I mean, I guess in the front wrapping before we actually talk movies and whatnot, DC has kind of been the one thing we want to talk because it's just because it's been a nightmare. Because if you remember,
it's not shaking up to be what we expected.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because at the start of 2022, I know they had like all those advertisements where it's like, we're going to show the Batman, Black Adam, The Flash, and Aquaman 2. That's going to be our 2022, and it's going to to be great. And then the Batman came out.
It was essentially supposed to revitalize, rebirth, and reinvest enthusiasm.
Yes.
For DC, I guess in general.
It was supposed to be the turnaround, and then the Batman came out.
It was during like the restructure.
It was good. Clearly, we have it. Really, for sure. It really hurt us in particular because we said we were going to do an episode of those 4 movies, so we didn't technically do a review of the Batman.
I mean, even if we did, it wouldn't have mattered considering everything.
Yeah, and then...
But yeah, I think we'll still do that, right?
I mean, I'd love to do like kind of maybe like a retrospect after some time goes by. I'd love to hop back on that because see some more movies.
A weird stage.
Use it for comparison. But yeah, so in like the summer or at like some point down the line, a bunch of stuff just like gummed up the works. There was yet another like changing of the guard with all the executives at Warner Brothers.
Right. Because in October of 2022, James Gunn announced that he was sharing the role. He's not like the head of DC. He's sharing it with this guy named Peter Safran. And it definitely signals a major shift in that Zack Snyder as a head handler of these movies is being ushered out, essentially, which makes me smile. Yes. But it also means that we initially... but it also means that we were initially going to... We had our sights set on a campaign of 4 movies that are now not exactly the rebirth of DC today. Well, that's not the case anymore.
I mean, the Flash is going to be the real kicker because the trailer's out, and I mean... if it's the whole we're hitting the giant reset button and everything is just kind of going back to square one, I mean, I'll take it. This
I don't think Grant would exactly be angry about that.
I wouldn't be necessarily distraught if all of that hard work over the past decade since Man of Steel was just magically swept under the rug.
Hard work is a strong title for that.
For what?
Hard work? I don't know if I'd call it hard work.
I mean, well, how else is Superman going to not save all of those people and not be a good example?
I hadn't thought of it that way. When you say it like that, when you put it like that, the phrasing is just very convincing. But yeah, I guess the partnership between Gunn and President Gray of DC, like he hasn't been shifted out. Like he's still the president of the studio.
These things take a while.
He's been so I guess the experience there makes it so that I would suspect. The management of DC, at least from an executive level, won't change that much because Gray is the president, Brillstein Gray. He has been the manager for 5 years of DC before he became president. And before then, he even helped produce some of the Conjuring movies. So I guess pairing that with Gunn and Safran, it'll be, I guess, a little bit of the same, but also a little bit of new with considering all of the projects Gunn is ushering in and that he's talked about. The presentation that Gunn had, or I guess that DC just had, claimed that the big problem, and I don't know if you heard about this, was that DC was just giving stories away. There was, I think they word for word articulated how I felt, which was that they didn't have a cohesive universe because they were just almost auctioning off stories with no pre-thoughts into the rhyme or reason of how they connected into the larger whole, considering they were supposed to be a part of the DC EU. So the fact that they admitted that kind of puts to shame a lot of DC's early cinematic universe efforts.
BVS, the original Suicide
like,
Squad.
The Snyder ones, I know.
Yeah, I mean, when you mention that, one of the weird points about BVS is that it crams way, way, way too much into that movie. It's like, for like comparison, imagine like if Marvel went from basically Captain America to I mean, they're doing that now. But before,
an
entirely different conversation.
Pre-Phase 4.
Yeah, like if you went from Captain America to Civil War, like you're not going to have that impact because you haven't spent the time to build this up and give us a reason to invest in this build up.
You need to lay the foundation.
And that's precisely what these movies didn't do. They try to do it. God bless their little heart. They try to actually make you care, but the writing is so dismally terrible that I just don't. I get a good laugh out of the third act of Man of Steel because of how much it kind of blows up in its face, but I mean, I'm kind of at a loss for a lot of positives to say about those movies, and I think this is clear evidence of that.
Another interesting thing that he mentioned was that he didn't approve of how DC tended to invest millions into a script that was only 2/3 of the way done. Like this just making it up as you go along mentality of writing on your feet didn't really bode well for a project that was worth that much. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on this too, but the plan now seems to be that there will be the management of DC now will supposedly fix that problem in both senses, where they don't invest millions into a project where the script isn't even done and they have to rewrite it, as well as making sure that it connects to the DCEU. And so there is definitely still seems to be a distinguishing factor between Gunn's DCEU, for lack of a better name, and more self-contained stuff like the Batman, Joker, Teen Titans Go, things that aren't a part of the DCEU. I think they're still trying to go for that, but have it be more balanced and more thought out from how I'm seeing it. And one thing that I do like about that is that it should allow audiences, no matter how different to like better select what they do and do not want to see based on preference by having that clear division between the DCEU and other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've had a recent run with like these animated DC movies that they like to put out on HBO Max. And so I think to your point, when they like segment all this could be rather interesting to see if they're going to try to adopt like a new model for like Marvel to try to keep up with.
Yeah, I wonder if it means that like everything will, I don't think equal advertising, but will try to be buttressed in like a similar manner so that people are aware of the animated stuff just as much as they are live action.
Yeah. I mean,
or something like that.
I think that's going to be with marketing. Like, I definitely think the crown jewel for them is going to clearly be like the live action stuff, The Flash, Aquaman. And I know, well, they announced that there's like phase 1 and there's all these new movies that they've been dropping. Like apparently there's a Superman Legacy movie and like Batman and Robin are going to team up. Like there's all these other movies that they've been like pumping out. And so I think for now, it's a question of just, we have to sit and wait and just see if this can be a turnaround or if this is rough, because clearly Marvel is just not changing for the better, and just
yeah. I'm just looking down the list, and it looks like we wait until we'll more or less see this come into fruition in 2024 or 2025 with Joker 2, the main event, the Batman Part 2 in October of 2025. Superman Legacy, like you said, which is going to be the true start of the DCEU now. Batman, Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
Is Supergirl still canceled?
I think it is.
Oh, that's a bummer. Because Brendan Fraser was supposed to be the villain.
Yeah, that's right. I know.
That's weird.
Well, Supergirl is supposed to be a character in The Flash, right? So
I don't know.
I mean, who knows? This stuff feels like it changes every single day, so I think it's really smart to try to invest in something saying X is going to happen. So we'll just.
But the focus throughout all of these planned movies was to make them morally complex, and that's a quote that I'm pulling directly from what was said at the presentation. So I'm not sure if that'll translate over into like Teen Titans Go.
Yeah.
But I guess that'll be an interesting phrase to hold on to in the years going forward. See if they can actually pull off the morally complex feel that they set themselves up for.
Yeah, like I think a good example to compare that to is like one of those animated movies I saw was called Superman versus the Elite, and the entire conflict around that movie is just like how Superman handles a no-killing rule, because there's this like group of heroes that kind of cleans up the streets called the Elite, but they're very, very comfortable with killing people. And so it's like very interesting to see Superman have to grapple with his image and working along with these other people, but then they're clearly setting like a bad example through killing. And I think like it's not perfect clearly, but I think it's really well done. It puts Superman in a very unique position that I feel like a lot of the more live action mainstream films don't really try to put him into. I know Man of Steel tries to do it, but like
tries is the key word.
I know I mean, I'm surprised there's a shocking amount of people that defend a father figure telling his son to let children die just to keep a secret. So, and I know it's supposed to be deeper than that.
Choices.
But I mean, I'd love for you to tell me. I would love to see why this boring, terrible summer blockbuster of 2013 is apparently a mind-reveling masterpiece that is supposed to change the landscape of cinema as we know it. But yeah, years passed, and I think the majority of us just don't care. So,
so I guess I'm glad that's being erased. Then,
yeah,
I'm shocked that The Flash is still moving forward.
Yeah, especially given all the icky stuff with Ezra Miller and what they've been doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
I'm also surprised that Gunn has been calling The Flash one of the greatest superhero movies ever.
Yeah, I know. He's putting a lot of stock in that, so...
I know. I guess it'll lead into Gunn's canon.
Yeah, I mean...
With,
We'll have to...
Do you think Christian Bale's going to show up as Batman?
I'm going to put stock. I'm going to say no. I mean, we already got Michael Keaton. No. I feel like Christian Bale, I think he did like one of those things where it's like, I'd only be Batman if...
Christopher Nolan was...
Exactly. And I don't think Christopher Nolan's going to want to do that at all, so I'm just gonna say no.
Right. Plus, you'd have the disadvantage of it being more of like a Batman roundup in the same way that No Way Home was a Spider-Man roundup.
Yeah, I can see that.
Instead of it being a tried and true Flash movie.
Right.
I don't know. Flash trailer, I'm not really sure it's going to be good. But,
June 16th?
That's not what the focus of this episode is. So we can move along. Unless you had anything else to add.
I mean, speaking of DC, they got nominated for some Oscars, which that's a lovely
that's true.
segue into the next the part of
this is the Oscars episode. We're coming at you for the 95th Academy Award ceremony this March of 2023.
Yes.
So when I make this video before the Oscars, hold me to that. You'll be able to see or watch this right before, and then you can compare it after, so it has some rewatching value. But I guess to review, last year had some moments.
Last year I did not.
We
watch
don't have
live,
to talk about them.
Unfortunately, the 1 year.
The 1 year you didn't watch live.
I said I guess I'll skip this year. Mm-hmm. It was like the craziest year in the history of this show.
Utter chaos. But we don't have to talk about that.
Yeah,
but, I will say last year had some good.
It was just a slap.
Nominees.
A Twitter poll won an Oscar apparently, and
Amy Schumer.
Yeah, that's the unholy trinity of why.
Right. The recipe for disaster.
Award show was bad, but yeah, I mean,
I would say nominees wise, it was pretty solid.
This year,
because,
or last year?
I mean, last year to review because you had Don't Look Up and Free Guy, but you also had plenty of great choices.
Yeah,
and I wasn't expecting Dune to clean sweep almost everything,
even
though I probably should have.
Not gonna lie. I mean, I think for the most part it should have. I mean, I can't reveal that, but for the most part, off the top of my head, I think Dune definitely deserved a good amount of those technical awards.
And I guess moving on into this year,
the
biggest difference that I see is that there's a lot less Disney.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that. Well, it's because last year there was Encanto, and they were able to sneak in like a best song and all that.
Right, but you also have like Cruella for costumes.
True.
You had it with best visual effects, acting, etc.
I mean, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is Disney, and so that's getting nominated for a bunch of stuff.
Right.
But
I guess I only really see it in certain categories that we'll be getting to, starting with best animated feature film.
Yeah, okay, best animated. This one's really interesting for us because typically, I would say historically, with few exceptions, it's always what was the most popular Disney movie, and we just give it to that one. But this is a really rare exception because the one Disney film, Turning Red, isn't really turning heads. If you see what I did there, but.
I mean, it was definitely, especially when
there was that
released.
review with the guy in the politics and
the man who entered YouTube,
mysteriously,
so to speak. Mysteriously, yeah.
But
no one really knows where he came from.
I think, I mean, when looking at these nominees, I think it's pretty clear who I think will win. But I think feasibly,
you want to go through them?
Feasibly, I think we have 3 possible winners. But we have Guillermo
I'm
del Toro's
shocked, and I'm also happy that no Lightyear.
Yeah,
Lightyear didn't make it on here.
I'm glad that they. I mean, I think the weakest one's obviously the Sea Beast, but I mean we're getting ahead of ourselves. So we have Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, The Sea Beast, and Turning Red. So I think looking at what we've seen award-wise so far, I'm blocking in del Toro's Pinocchio because.
I'm glad I've seen all of these before I recorded this because I would also definitely lock Pinocchio without question.
Yeah, because I mean, it makes
considering
sense.
It's the Golden Globe and it has the name recognition of Del Toro.
It's won everything it's basically been set up for. In fact, in like some awards like the BAFTAs, I think it got nominated for stuff beyond animated film. Like it got like a production design nom. So it's clearly making a lot of the rounds with these award shows. Your point, Del Toro.
And that traction is just a pretty good teller.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's not to say that other award shows necessarily automatically highlight who's winning, but there's so much going for Del Toro's Pinocchio that I really can't see anyone else winning. I'm just like...
It's that word of mouth factor that like really pushes it.
Del Toro having that backup. And clearly it's like a passion project of his. And it's got good stop motion, so I can totally see the justification. And I don't think it's like an infuriating win. Like, if it went to the Sea Beast, or, I mean, this might be controversial between the two of us. If it went to Turning Red, I don't think people are going to be too fond of that. Because
Dobie Shi and her experience and her history with Pixar makes me happy that Turning Red is like at least nominated, and I wouldn't mind it winning because of that. I didn't mind it, but yeah, I mean, Del Toro is what I'm expecting.
Yeah, other than that, I mean, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, I'm wanting to hopefully see this weekend, but I think that's kind of a nice pick.
Oh, tell me what you think. Yeah. It'd be cool in a full circle way, just considering the jump all these years from YouTube to now the Oscars.
Kind of that full story arc. And I think it's really interesting with the whole documentary style I've seen. And I've heard good things about the story. Right. So Puss in Boots is also... I think that's also a really good one because
we'll talk about that. That's you think it's a really good one?
We'll fully dissect that later. I know,
guys. I wonder what Grant thinks of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish.
I mean,
I wonder which movie of these 3 or 5 Grant wants to win.
I mean, you don't spoil the joke now. I mean,
I'm sorry.
The better storytellers have foreshadowing. Sam, ruin the joke.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean...
The better storytellers don't gaslight.
Well, I mean, I didn't gaslight in the first place. I don't need to make this public knowledge.
I think you did.
Anyways, other topics that we were on about, we wanted to say visual effects for some reason, even though I feel like it's kind of redundant because everyone knows it's going to Avatar. I mean...
So, I guess you want to do Best Picture instead?
No, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I think visual effects... I think Avatar... Well, I mean, I guess we'll talk about it a little bit later, but... I think visual effects is the only one I could be on board with Avatar actually winning out of everything that got nominated, because, I mean, clearly they spent all that time animating, mocapping, all that stuff, and I think it's totally justified. I mean, it's not like All Quiet on the Western Front really should win. I mean, as much as I think that movie has some nice stuff going for it, visual effects is probably one of the weakest things I'd say it got nominated for. The Batman would be kind of cool, but the Batman felt kind of light with visuals. Wakanda Forever.
I really liked how they made. I don't really know what the criteria is specifically with visuals. I think it's mainly as far as the Oscars goes.
It's mainly just computer generated imagery and just like how it kind of implements that into the craft of the film, or
Well, the Batman is one of like the prettiest superhero movies I've seen.
Yeah,
I thought the look of that was one of the best things.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff about the Batman. I mean. Out of the 3 things it got nominated for, I think they're all totally justified, being visuals, sound, and the makeup and hairstyling. And I thought that was I think my personal favorite's the sound. There's a lot of really good sound design with like suit.
Especially during the car chase, where Batman really was irresponsible and let thousands of people die on the highway.
I know. I actually liked it when he mercilessly mowed down all the civilians of Gotham. It's not like what Ben Affleck did when he did the same thing, but he actually did that, and that's the trope.
Yeah, see, now I've got you going, Grant.
Yeah. I mean, so then, I guess, other ones, I mean, I think in terms of, like, actors and actresses, some of these seem pretty straightforward, like, I'm pretty confident Brendan Fraser is going to snag one for The Whale, because clearly it's a good performance.
I hope he wins.
And, like, obviously there's the whole story of him coming back after being blacklisted, so I think that's a pretty solid lock for the most part. Actor supporting role, I'm probably going to say it's wrong. Ke-Huy Quan. I apologize if I said that wrong, but Wayman from Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think he's definitely been making a lot of the rounds in the award show, and to be perfectly frank, I think he should win it. I don't really see anyone else really taking it. Actress in leading role could be interesting, because I could totally see Cate Blanchett get it for Tar.
That's what I was thinking, right?
Because I think she's kind of the main focal point with Tar, and from what I've heard, it's been incredibly good. Michelle Yeoh, I also might be saying that wrong. Michelle Yeoh,
I think you have that right.
Okay, if I get it wrong, again, apologies. I'm an amateur. I'm clearly out of my league, but I think she could also be a very, very strong pull for actress in lead role, so it'll be a good toss-up between the two. And then Angela Bassett for actress in supporting role, I think that's also a very clear lock-in. For the most part, so
I approve of it's a specific movie, but Top Gun Mavericks categories all seem pretty well deserved.
I think
between the three, I definitely sound is what I would go for with Top Gun Mavericks.
Sound, planes, all the weird.
The editing is also, especially during the flying scenes, the editing I could also see.
Yeah, I could see it also ripping away editing. Even though I'd love to see Everything Everywhere All at Once kind of clean sweep that, because I think that one also had some pretty good editing. Especially with all the
I definitely think it has the best editing, but I also see
Top Gun
objectively Top Gun taking it. Yeah,
I noticed that
Babylon.
Yeah, Babylon got nominated for a bunch of technical stuff, but not a single thing for like writing or acting. Which, as a above average Damien Chazelle fan, I think is completely warranted because there's a lot of good technical work with Babylon. Like, I think the costume design, score, I want to see it win score because I actually think it's got a really
elephant
good
effects.
score.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's not really.
Let's see. The Fabelmans is definitely going to be a shoe-in.
Fabelmans, I could see like
directing possibly, music probably because it's John Williams.
Like going back to his roots.
Maybe writing. That just seems like a gimme.
That feels like a gimme, even though I'd love again. I want to hold out for the Everything Everywhere All at Once sweep, but I mean.
Oh yeah, if it pulled a Dune.
If it did, I mean. But that's the thing is because Everything Everywhere All at Once is the most nominated. It's like 13 because it's got. Like,
that's what's the most remarkable. Yeah, 11.
Oh, 11 because it's got one for. I think it's got. It's got
best supporting actor, leading actress, supporting actress with Jamie Lee Curtis, directing, editing, music, design, original song, and writing.
And best picture.
And I don't think this is bias because I've seen all of the best picture nominees at least, and all of these awards feel very well deserved, especially with how low budget it was.
Yeah, I mean,
it was like $25 million.
Like we weren't really expecting much out of it. It just came out swinging. Again, 10 out of 10 movie.
Have you seen I think it was an interview, but they used a lot of tools that like just studios didn't really use. Like they used stuff like Premiere or common editing softwares that like anyone used.
I heard some crazy things like the directors did the special effects, which I think was really awesome.
They really used their budget all the way, and even if there was something low budget, they were either able to mask it with like how they shot it, or again with the editing to just make it look so much better than like you would initially believe based off of what they had access to. Which is really impressive to me.
Absolutely. And so
yeah, all of those feel deserved. Do you want to go over Best Picture?
I guess we can, because I'm trying to catch up, and I'm trying my best to see all of them before.
Right.
And let's see. Looking at the list now, I've seen
All Quiet on the Western Front.
I've seen 6 of the 10. I still need to see Banshees, Tar, Triangle of Sadness, and Women Talking.
Okay.
Which I think that's I'm trying to rank them on my Letterboxd shill. And like so far I feel like those 4 movies are going to fill in the middle because I don't think anything's going to top Everything Everywhere All at Once for me personally, but
no.
I think Tar is probably going to post up top in my opinion, and I definitely want to see what Banshees has to offer. I've heard a lot of really good things about that. I think a lot of the stuff it got nominated for is totally well justified. Triangle of Sadness and Women Talking I haven't heard as much of, but I'm going to keep an open mind because both of those have gotten really good word of mouth. I think the ultimate takeaway I've just gotten from this year is that, for the most part, this feels above average on like nominees where I'm like, this doesn't feel like one obvious winner and then like 4 like duds. It's going to most likely go to the dud. Like, on most of these I'm looking at, I'm like, yeah, I could see it going to this person, and I think it's a good, like, accurate representation.
Not a bad choice.
Yeah, for the most part. Like, I don't think we're...
Elvis, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Elvis is like... The only... Out of Best Picture, the only ones that I think are really duds are Elvis and Avatar 2, in my opinion. But... I mean, again, from what I've seen, who knows if any of the other 4 are just, like, not my cup of tea. But, I mean, from what I've heard, it feels like an actual good... good variety, a lot of well-justified picks, and I mean, I think at least in terms of who's actually winning, like, I think there's a little bit more intrigue, or I don't know if that's just because of after last year, if we're just desperate enough to get on to next year, but, I mean, yeah, there's also, documentary.
Do you have any lock-ins for Best Picture? I know we both would definitely prefer Everything Everywhere All at Once to win.
Knee-jerk response.
That would be the best case scenario.
I would love to see it kind of be the underdog that like kind of rises above the odds and like runs away with most wins. Like there's some that I think it's not going to get a lot for, like maybe actress in leading role, but yeah, I would love to see it like surprise everyone and pull directing and then nab Best Picture. But I mean, yeah.
I'm gonna guess The Fabelmans right now for the winner of Best Picture.
Okay. I'm gonna guess Banshees.
It's more of me just like copping out with a safe bet.
Yeah.
Because it seems like the type of movie that would win Best Picture.
Yeah, I mean,
but I would love. I feel like it could feasibly go to Everything Everywhere All at Once for a similar reason as Del Toro's Pinocchio, but also because with all of the recognition it's been getting for its merits that are totally justified, for it to eventually get Best Picture doesn't seem completely out of the question.
Yeah, I think that's why I think it's a good contender. It doesn't feel like a situation where it's clearly like the underdog that everyone wants, but the Academy's not going to recognize. Like, I think there's a good enough reason or line of logic to give it to Everything Everywhere All at Once. But, I mean, yeah, I guess we just gotta wait it out a few weeks, see who gets picked.
Yeah.
Hopefully, no. Well, there's always usually some weird, like, slip up every year, but hopefully
right, but it's the Oscars. When isn't it? We know the slip up's going to be in Best Animated Feature.
Yeah, but again, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
I'm sorry. We should move on.
I mean, I guess
get to it sooner so you can
Avatar 2's on the plate. Yeah, that's a good segue.
Right now we want to focus on 3 movies that are up in the Oscars for various categories.
Yeah, that's true. Technically, all these have been nominated in one form or fashion.
Mm-hmm. So that's the overarching theme. The other theme that connects all of these next 3 movies is that they are long-term sequels to a film that came out. Well, maybe not the second one.
Movie 2 is a bit questionable, but I mean, yeah, I see the connection
between... It's not
between...
long-term at all, but yeah. The first and the third especially.
First and third actually have a bit of history because it's like, I know that the online Discord revolving around these two has been kind of funny. Because one, I feel like people have clearly been favoring one over the other, and we're going to clearly.
They definitely have.
But if you've seen the thumbnail or the title of the video, you know what movie it is. But we'll get there.
Maybe I'll put something fake on it. Maybe I'll put on.
Maybe you will. Who knows?
Maybe I'll put on Turning Red.
Do it anyways. But let's just.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
We want to start with the first one.
Yeah, and also other fun fact: we've ranked this in like how much we enjoy these movies. So this first one.
These movies go in ascending order of quality. So yeah,
we'll get more passionate as the episode continues.
Mm-hmm. Right. Some of us more than the other.
Yeah, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Not to spoil it. Okay, so we'll start this off by the movie that both of us definitely would place last out of the 3.
Clearly.
Avatar: Way of the Water. This movie is not up for Best Animated Feature despite it being almost entirely animated. It is instead nominated for Best Picture, Production Design, which is also kind of funny, Sound, and Visual Effects. And I can see visual effects, like you said.
I know it's going to get
but I cannot see the others, nor would I say the others are well deserved.
I can't see sound, I can't see production, and I definitely can't see Best Picture. But yeah, again, like 1 for 1, that's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right.
But I mean, yeah. So I guess going back, before we dive in, I mean, the original Avatar. I guess I kind of want to rewatch it one day. I mean, off the top of my head, it's good. It's at least fine. Very visually impressive, still holds up, especially for a 2009 movie, which I find quite impressive considering how much they kind of played their hand into CG. So I think it broke ground in that regard. It broke new ground. But I think, I mean, story-wise, I'm not that invested because it's clearly, everyone just says it's just watered down Pocahontas or watered down Dances with Wolves.
Right, which surprises me that... But one strange thing about both of these movies is that they don't seem to stick in people's heads for very long, and yet they're some of the first one's the highest grossing movie of all time.
Yeah, I mean, everyone jokes it's like, where's the cultural impact or something like that? Because it's like, It makes, I mean, I can see why, at least for the first movie, because clearly it was a new idea. James Cameron, obviously, he's a great director. He's made some amazing films, Terminator 2, Aliens, Titanic. Like, all of these are clearly been, like, massive hits. So having someone like him want to do this next big, like, very ambitious project that plays a lot with technology that was, I want to say, was, like, really starting to be fully utilized at this level. Because I would say it was around that time where we really started to see a lot more CG be very saturated in more mainstream movies. So to have a film that felt dependent on it to that specific level and have that level of quality put into it, I think for 2009 was very exciting to see, even though I was clearly 7 years old and I didn't see it in theaters. But and so
because for me, 2009, yeah,
and so when I think about Avatar 2, like clearly it's 13 years or I guess 13 because that came out 2022. So clearly it's been like long time in the making. James Cameron's back. This has been the only thing he's worked on for 13 years. And like you get to revisit Pandora, even though it's kind of weird because you'd think that for a movie that isn't that dependent on the story, you'd think that they'd not really kind of dig too much into the story. But I mean, yeah, they're really kind of, I think obviously it was like above all else, it just wanted you to go out to the theater just to like see what it's about and just kind of get back into it. Not kind of in the same regard as say like Top Gun Maverick, but still just kind of be there. And I think
Avatar is definitely boosted by seeing it in a theater.
Yeah,
I would definitely say you're right.
It's one of those like it's much better in the theater. It's more impressive when it's cinematic. Blah blah blah. And like clearly it's making the rounds because like it's one of the highest grossing movies ever. Yet again, it's like broke $2 billion in the box office.
It broke $2 billion,
especially, which I think is kind of impressive, especially given post-COVID. Because I think like any movie post-COVID to me, I just don't care about the box office anymore because like only the rarest of rare movies, at least in terms of like recognition, I feel like can break over $500 million anymore. Because I think there's just like so many movies that I would say are good like on their own merits, but just don't have good box offices. And I think we like to believe in the philosophy that box office does not automatically equate to movie quality.
Oh, for sure.
So obviously, like there are people that try to make the dumbest arguments, but I would love to see how those movies would perform nowadays if they were given, like if they had a first release
with modern standards.
Yeah, like. That's why the box office is very weird, and I don't think it's the best. I don't think it's the best metric for judging a movie because it's clearly going to be reflective of the time. Obviously, like Batman v Superman, because we're already talking about it, that made like $800 million in the box office. But you have to like realize before that time, we weren't just like bogged down by what this movie actually was. The idea and prospect of having Batman and Superman fight each other on screen was clearly an interesting prospect, and so. But I don't think that justifies and says, oh, it made X amount of money, therefore it is a good film.
Right.
So.
The amount of money something makes does not equal its quality.
Right. If that were the case, like, there'd be so much stuff where it's like, the best animated movie ever made is the 2019 version of The Lion King, because that made $1.6 billion, which is... I mean, I see why, but it's man, that's upsetting.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So let's talk about the movie.
My experience with the first Avatar is non-existent. It came out when I was in kindergarten. I didn't see it. I was too busy watching Up. So I only got around to the first Avatar recently before I went to see the second one because I needed the context. I needed that 3-hour-long epic context. And it is definitely, like you said, a movie indicative of the times in that its visuals are like the noteworthy thing about it. It came out during a time where even when the MCU was finding its footing, it was still heavily reliant on practical sets and physical locations alongside the CG, as opposed to Quantumania, which is like just a green screen. Like so it was during that era where like they were starting to marry CG with practical action. So to have an entire movie,
Iron Man at the time, but yeah, like to your point exactly, like that's what I was saying. Where CG didn't get to this point where it's like everything is a everything is just visual imagery that's made in a computer, and we just plop people onto it as like the physical anchor point.
Avatar was the first movie to push the envelope in that regard, and it is definitely just a tech show. I'm not going to disagree with that, but I would also say that I actually enjoyed that movie a bit because it was a tech show that was being used to boost or like present this world that like you would not be able to fathom or even visualize any other way. And like the world that they were presenting in the culture, that is the story. Like the world that the tech is presenting is the story. So I think in that regard, it definitely succeeds at what it was trying to do. And what helps it is that it is watered down Pocahontas, I'm pretty sure. But it's married with a pretty engaging conflict where Sully is debating whether or not his loyalty is with the humans or the Na'vi, which are like opening doors for his life. That like, But the heart of that, amidst the world that's being produced with the tech, was a nice balance. And I think the reason The Way of the Water isn't as good as the first one is because it doesn't have that heart at the center of it, that Jake Sully dilemma, because his relationship with the Na'vi was really the heart of it. And it trades that for Sully's 4 kids. Sully and Gamora are not in the movie, even though they're more characters than their kids are, I would say.
I mean, to your point, like, I feel like this movie wanted to have that kind of rekindling because the conflict is about they need to, like, make ties with the water Na'vi or something like that. And so I feel like that was clearly what they were trying to set up until they got to the big third act fight again. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, it just didn't have that same level of heart because, again, it feels like we're just treading familiar ground. And, yeah, I mean, it again, like, I think when you say that whole point about it's really built and contingent around the world and not necessarily the actual, like, characters and the story and the writing, I think that's why so many people think of Pandora, like, just the planet, a lot more than they think
and
about,
not
like,
the story.
Jake Sully or Sigourney Weaver's character. Or, like, or Zoe Saldana. Or Saldana, however. I'm not doing good with names today. Which,
Right. Because, like, even though the characters were weak, I guess, in Avatar, you could argue they were at least sparing. Yeah. But it really cannot be overstated how prevalent and, like, unavoidable the kids in this are. Like, I'm not kidding. You could seriously... There are 4 kids. There are 2 brothers and 2 sisters. You could combine the brothers and the sisters into one character instead of 2 each, and it would probably work out better. Yeah. Because, like, at any given point in time, it's focusing on, like, one of them, and the others just don't have anything to do. So maybe you could merge the brothers, get rid of the youngest sister, and so that way you would keep the Sigourney Weaver Na'vi thread with what's going on there and what they're clearly trying to set up, instead of just having all of this blank space where they're just there for the sake of either getting captured or maybe just having a tiff or a run-in with some water Na'vi. Yeah. I don't know. It felt like it was big for the sake of being big when I
the whole
really didn't think it needed to be that.
It felt more pomp and spectacle than actually, like, giving you...
Which, again, like, I guess it is spectacle, but it's spectacle where it begs... Right. Like, and, like, it begs your attention. It's a strange balance where it insists that, like, again, it's about the world, but, like, it also is calling attention to the story, and it's definitely not a good story, is what's holding it back.
Yeah, because, I mean, the reason... It's not because having, like, some long, big, grandiose story that's, like, 3 hours long, that's not bad. It's not an inherently bad idea.
You can do that,
but you gotta have, like, a reason. You can't just, like, piddle about. Like, the reason something like this, or I keep bringing them up, but the Snyder Cut, the reasons those don't work is because when you really distill all the, like, the big, like, the grandiose music and the spectacle and the blah, 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 like, when you just boil this down to what this is actually offering, like, it does not have justification for being this long. But compare that
and the
to
longer it is, the more fleeting it becomes.
Yeah, and compare that to like the Batman, which is like this new take on Batman. It's clearly like trying to go for something new and interesting. Like maybe you could try to argue that a little bit of it is maybe a bit prolonged, but for the most part, it's like playing into.
It uses every minute.
Yeah, it doesn't
of what it has.
It doesn't try to like present itself as, oh, I'm 3 hours long. It's like, no, I want to tell this story. I want to follow Batman. I want to present this character, and I just need all this time to do it. It feels more focused on wanting to lead you through this entire story and adventure with Batman. And that's why that feels far more natural when it comes to a much meatier length.
It wasn't 3 hours for the sake of it.
Yeah.
It was out of necessity.
Yeah. I forget, maybe it's like 2 hours and 50 minutes, or maybe it was 3 hours, but still, like, despite having a very, very lengthy runtime, it feels like it's something that deserves that runtime. It really needs it, which I just really can't fully say for Avatar. Because, again, like, the story has never been
do you want to...
Avatar's strong suit, and so...
Right. And I think the first film understood that better.
Yeah.
Because the second one takes all of these liberties with the story that just create this imbalance between the world it's trying to present versus the story it's trying to match it behind. And this is definitely going to lead us into spoilers.
Yeah,
so I don't want to jump the gun too quick.
Put the edit up. Do
you want to do that?
Spoiler. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Here it is. Let me just. Yeah. Clicked it. Here we are. Spoiler.
So.
The villain is the weakest link in this to me.
Really? Is he the villain?
Story-wise. Right.
Okay.
Because if you've seen the first movie, Sully eventually, like, he has to go up against the general who's trying to eradicate the Na'vi, and he's killed. And
he dies,
pierced
in the heart by a comedically large arrow. He's left to,
Hawkeye arrow,
decompose into the plants and stuff.
And they bring him back. They turn him into a Na'vi, and they bring him back to be the bad guy in Way of the Water.
Yeah.
And I don't really think I like that angle at all, because in a movie where, like, it's been so long.
Yeah, like,
since 2009 for one thing. Like, there's plenty of, like, there's been plenty of time to, like, think of new conflicts, and they almost thought of a new conflict, and, like, they could have taken the story elsewhere or pushed it forward. But instead, this almost feels like a backward step in which you're relying on it. Relying on an already established character.
Again, treading old ground, because it's like, because that's the thing, is like, there's the opening bit where he's like, yeah, so this is my life, I have 4 kids now, and everything's all fine, but then humanity just came back, apparently, and, like, it was really, like, frustrating to, like, kind of gloss over all this setup, and then, like, to your point, when the general's back as the Na'vi, it's like a throwaway line where it's like, yeah, we knew that when you were doing everything in the first movie, we wanted to make sure we had, like, backups of you, so, yeah, you're in an avatar body now. And then it's just, like, the movie going, yeah, we're back at it again, but now we have more people in it, and we're just going to see a different part of the planet, which... And I mean, that, like, that's where the water stuff feels weird to me, because... One of my biggest questions I had was, why were the water people really necessary? Like, I get that the plot really kind of transitions over to that, and there's, like, all the boat technology with the humans, and obviously you don't want to just do
trying to recreate the wonder of the first movie, but, like, with a water setting instead of the
James
woods.
James Cameron loves his water. Like, that's kind of one of his go-tos.
He do.
So I can see that sort of, but, like, it's weird because we know Avatar 3 is coming, and that's going to be about, like, fire, apparently. So is he just making Avatar The Last Airbender? But like,
maybe. Maybe we get wind next in the sky.
Well, that makes you wonder, is the first one earth or air? Because the first one is in a lot of, like, plants and the trees, but at the same time, the final fight's like a giant air battle? So
I would guess earth, just because the emphasis is on the trees, and that
I would say earth,
connects to nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the weird thing about, again, the general coming back is that really is the first strike story-wise, where, like, the things they end up doing with that just for the sake of including him are what take me out of the experience a lot, because he comes back to life as a Na'vi, and he is immediately commissioned to hunt Sully. And when that happens, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sully leaves. Like, he drops out as the chief, he stops being the chief, and he leaves. like he leaves the Na'vi tribe to go to the water Na'vi, but the general is still hunting him, which confuses me.
Yeah, like
because he's not the leader. He's not like the head of the rebellion anymore. So like, there's no need to hunt him. And the reason they keep him hunting solely is because they want to keep the general as the bad guy. Like, it's literally just for that.
Yeah, like, that's why I'm saying I'm confused about why does he need the water people? Because, like, that part of the movie really felt like a glaze over to me, because I remember there's, like, that scene at the start where, like, once the humans are back on the planet, they have, like, a train set up, and they want to have this, like, fun action sequence where it's like, oh, we're gonna, like, rob the train for supplies, and then that's clearly trying to set up, like, conflict, because the two sons, like, get in, and he's like, I'm gonna disobey orders, and I'm gonna be the hero, and then clearly it backfires, and he's like, you can't, like, I don't think it was like, you gotta, like, listen and follow orders, and then you're punished because, oh, you didn't listen. And, yeah, again, going back to your point with, like, the 4 kid characters, the 2 sons were literally just, like, irreplaceable. Well, not irreplaceable. Like,
bro!
No, dang it. I'm getting my words mixed up. They were, like, what's the word? Like, dang it. The word where...
what was it?
It's, like, they're the exact same. They're, like, not replaceable, but...
They are kind of replaceable.
Well, yeah, I mean... They're just
one of them becomes pretty replaceable at the end.
Well,
just saying.
They just feel they feel identical basically. Where it's like one of them
interchangeable.
Yeah, interchangeable. There you go. Not irreplaceable.
Personality wise, they're definitely interchangeable.
Interchangeable. So the 2 of them are just interchangeable because like one of them has a subplot where like he helps a whale and then that kind of helps turn the tide of the whole battle. But then on the other hand, the other guy doesn't do anything and then dies.
Oh yeah. And then you have Spider, who's like a pseudo brother, but he's a human. And then he's used to like be the general's son, who's now a Na'vi.
Yeah. See, I guess that kind of
it's like that.
Yeah, that leads me to one of my main problems with the writing is because when there was a lot of weird subplots, like the reason I didn't get into this movie writing wise was because every time they would pose like a conflict or some question, I would always immediately have one question just always screaming in my head about like...
That derails the whole thing.
Exactly. So like with Spider's point, I remember like the conflict was that Zoe Saldana is like, oh, well, he might hang out with our kids, but he'll never be one of us. And then I know that there was some point in the movie where he's like, yeah, I had to stay on this planet because I was a baby when the original movie happened and babies can't be in cryo-free, so I just grew up here. But then I'm like, well, I know in the first movie, you have that technology, humans still have that technology where you can connect to, like, the avatar body. And we see in this movie that there are, like, normal, quote-unquote, good humans that work with Jake that, like, also use that technology still, even though this movie really doesn't touch that at all, which is another weird point.
Also, Sully was a human.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, I don't understand why she's still hung up over Spider being a human.
Well, that's leading me to another point. And so there's that already. And so I'm just wondering, can't you just, like, use the avatar body and hook up to, like, a smaller avatar that you have? Like, I know it's not really fully explored, but, like, there's no workaround to that and all the technology that you have. And then, to go off of your point, I think the one that really just kind of threw me for a loop that I was just not having at all was that when they get to the water tribe, like, a bunch of the younger ones are like, oh, look, they're only half-breeds, or, like, they aren't fully avatar like us. Look at their hands. And what I find weird is that at the end of the first movie, I know Jake got like his mind transferred into the avatar body, but it's like, if that's the case, biologically speaking, shouldn't his kids be fully avatar? Like, why are they
full avatars? Yeah, that's what I thought.
He's like, I know his subconscious is human, but I don't think that's going to like affect how they're like biologically structured. And so like, you're making so much emphasis and you're like having them fight over each other and nearly kill each other over the fact that they're not a pure avatar or something like that, which is really dumb. And so I'm just like, yeah, this whole subplot.
It goes back to your point, like you said, about like how these things happen for the sake of boosting a runtime that is 3 hours.
Like, if you could...
And when in reality you could have like just written around that.
So many scenes. Like, my least favorite scene was like when they just got into this scuffle over this issue, and I'm just like, how, like, can someone just give me a good reason why, like, they're not fully avatar? Because it's like, it felt like the implication was like, oh, well, in the past, Jake was a human, so clearly you don't come from fully avatar roots, I guess? But then you bring up the whole point where it's like, look at their hands. And I'm like, that implies that like they're like they still have human DNA of some sort, and I just don't get how that works.
Right.
Because like if he transferred his mind into an avatar body, then biologically speaking, he shouldn't have anything human about it. Like subconsciously, yeah, he's still human technically, but like, and if like wouldn't that also extend in part to like Jake as well? Like obviously it's supposed to be meant for the kid characters that I don't really care about, but like just. But yeah, like again, these issues are what mount up to essentially having your third act being lackluster. Because when this is what you're using to develop your characters, I have a lack of connection because you're wasting time.
I think that translates into other things too, like how the script will just casually rinse and repeat more or less the same situation that allows the 4 kids to split up and have one of them captured.
Yes.
Like the level of not caring to just have that happen again and again.
They were always using the
just
youngest one as like the conflict starter, where it's like, they got jumped by the people in the forest. Oh no, now they're on the boat. Oh no, now he's got taken hostage again. Like,
if I had that script, I would have been like, hey gang, it's time to cut the youngest kid. It's time to go. Get real.
Let's back this up. Like.
Oh yeah. Also, like there are a bunch of like smaller. At times, it doesn't feel like they even watched the first movie because, like, there's Gamora's whole thing. I'm gonna call her Gamora.
Yeah.
There's her whole thing where like she doesn't like Spider because he's a human, even though Jake's a human, and like she got over that in the first movie. And then like there's other stuff where like the 2 human characters from the first film that you mentioned are treating the Sigourney Weaver kid and. When she mentions her spiritual visions, they say that she's making them up, even though they definitely know about the spirit tree from the first movie and how there's a spiritual connection to like another plane of existence on this planet. So like, why would they discount that if they know for a fact that it exists? Like, there are so many little details that I feel like just like weren't thought about. That ruin the immersion. Yeah. I mean, and since the immersion is the goal of this film,
precisely,
that's broken. Yeah,
I mean, at least with the point with the Sigourney Weaver spirit tree and all that, part of me wants to say that considering they're making like 3 more of these things, and considering this was financially successful, so they're going to clearly go through with 3. I think that's supposed to be some like long-term story where like because. There's that bit where the Sigourney Weaver avatar like had like a seizure when trying to connect to the tree, and then they treated that. Like I think. And they don't really, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't really get an answer or really any, like, wrap-up for that. So I think that's clearly supposed to be, like, some long-term storytelling that's going to...
A mystery box they planted for the next one,
to get interest. But, yeah, I mean, that's why it's tricky trying to critique stuff like this, because in the future, maybe it gets answers. But, I mean, gotta say...
They still padded 3 hours. Yeah, I'm just saying.
They've trimmed it down a little bit. Like, I don't think it needed to be 3 hours. If you wanted to make it larger than the original, make it 2.5 hours. Like,
and for another thing, do something new. Like, I don't think the humans needed to come back at all.
Yeah, like why
they didn't need to bring back the general.
How about you introduce the fact that there are these other tribes, and then just
introduce this new culture,
make it like a giant like political drama almost, where like there's fighting between the tribes, and there's clearly this
almost start a war.
Yeah,
maybe
like. Have the third act
it would be like
it would be
more low key, maybe.
Yeah,
but
I know. Like, when you rehash it, it's just okay. Humans are going to try to take over and hunt Jake Sully again, but this time water. Like, it's not that interesting. It's just you don't have you're clearly just treading old ground. You're not really giving us something new to work with. And I mean, when it comes, like writing Rise, I just think this is really lackluster. And worse,
and by doing that, you're not playing into the strengths of the world that you're presenting because you're so hung up over. Yeah.
And even then, like, technically speaking, I don't think it was like a technical disaster, not at all, but like, technically, I think.
But there were some frame dips, you know what I'm saying?
Outside of that, I think technically speaking, the movie was fine. I know, like, some people might complain. I know YMS had some weird complaint about the sound, and I mean. I don't know, I wasn't paying attention to that. I wasn't really impressed sound-wise, which, again, is kind of why it feels like a weird pick for an Oscar, but, yeah, I mean, but then again, to your point, the one main issue that came with this movie, technically, was that they wanted to film some of these scenes with lower frame rates, and apparently that was like really jarring to some people. I know I tried paying attention to it because when I saw the movie, this was well after the first like round or wave of criticisms was really out and about. So I tried to find it, and I think I saw it in a few cases. I don't think it completely ruined the immersion for me, or maybe that was just because I was at some like old rinky-dink normal standard showing that like didn't really care about frame rate presentation or something like that. So
well, what I found interesting about the frame rate was that all of the shots that looked the best and had no frame rate dip were the shots that they used in the trailer.
Yeah, like there's that one. Like my favorite shot was like that sequence where he was like riding the whale. And like, yeah, sure, I don't care character-wise, but I think visually that was a pretty good shot. That was a good little sequence where he's like flying in the water, and there's like the upside down shot where he glides along the surface. Like that was really well done. There's a good little silhouette shot. But again, to your point, that one was working perfectly smoothly. No frame rates, no issues to be had there.
Yeah, so I don't think it was an intentional choice. Well, I think it was an intentional choice to like boost those.
Right.
So it looked
to put
good.
more emphasis on that.
I don't think it was an artistic thing at all.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely need to like look into that more to actually fully understand. But yeah, I mean, again, just drawing. And I mean, the visuals are still, obviously, I think those are definitely...
Right.
It still looks good. Like, I think for the most part, I never really thought to myself, like, oh, wow, this is, like, just computer people. Like, it actually felt... It had a good level of authenticity. I think it felt very... Yeah, like, it felt very immersive, just, like, visually. Even, again, frame rate issues aside, like, I don't think this felt like, oh, wow, this is, like, some... CG planet. Like, actually, like, the presence of the Na'vi didn't feel very artificial to me.
Mm-hmm. And I think that level of authenticity still translated into the bits where they were focusing on this new part of the world, which is why I still have some goodwill for this movie. I really enjoyed the, I guess, the second quarter that was just world building, because that maintains the strength of the original. Yeah. You're exploring this culture. You're focusing on the immersion that you're supposed to be building towards. Instances like the whale, where it's just How to Train Your Dragon, but it's a whale, and the anemone spirit tree, which is a cool evolution of like the tree from the first movie, are instances where like the things that they are presenting aren't bound to plausible characters or threats. So they're just like, they're enjoyable to look at and see explored.
Yeah.
And since that's why Avatar exists, I suppose, that's why it really succeeds. But by the time the fight begins, it almost feels like I've been watching two completely different movies, where like that nature documentary part that I was really, really into is trying to be married with this, I don't know, rehash of the first Avatar that just doesn't come together as well. So in the end, it just feels like a waste of a lot of elements, which are not that forgivable considering how much time they had from 2009 to 2022. Like, you know, I have heard it said that he made a whole language for the Na'vi that he just didn't use.
I think, I mean...
Yeah.
I know, that was another YMS point, and, like, I think part of that was because, apparently, in order to get broad, like, demographic appeal, no one's gonna want to have to, like, sit down and just see, like, subtitles. I know that's, like, a dumb complaint. I have no problem with subtitles. I like watching them in my movies at home, but, like...
Same.
I think, because this movie was very visually... I don't want to say demanding, but... Considering so much emphasis was put on the visuals, if you had to spend half the time just looking at the bottom of the screen and not actually seeing what's going on, I feel like that kind of robs the whole point.
That's understandable.
Even though, like, at the same time, it's weird that you would develop a whole language and, like, try to be flexing that while at the same time just not using
the language.
Like, there's got to be a middle ground where it's like, if you wanted to have, like, more important scenes where they're discussing, like, politics or something, you could, like, use that language where it's not as visually important. Or... I don't know. So
the last point that's spoilery that I wanted to mention was the brothers are very replaceable, as seen when I think the older one dies.
Yeah, one of them
towards
dies.
the end.
I said it earlier, but one of them straight dies, and they play it like really straight, and I don't care. But
But then, the reason I don't care as much is because it happens right before James Cameron recreates Titanic at the end. And so they just like they play it super straight, and then they forget. They just like continue with the movie like nothing happened. It's such whiplash to me. It feels like they tried really hard to have this impactful moment, which isn't really achieved in the end either, because he had to share screen time with like 3 other sibling characters
who all had like long development.
Right.
I think he was the least developed, if you ask me, which I think
so.
Is why that's
I think you're right.
Yeah, the reason the moment just
maybe the youngest one, maybe the little girl,
but I think the reason that moment just really doesn't work is because, again, there's no development. Like, why should I care?
And then they just move on. They move on like it didn't happen to fight the general.
Like, yeah, he's dead. That's a shame. But what about the other ones that are still in the boat? Gotta get to that. So
gotta go.
It's just It's just
I guess
messy.
Do you have any expectations for the fire one?
I mean, if you do, this is gonna be like 10 years before we hear anything about it again. So just
we got some waiting.
I like they're trying to. They're still like news outlets like IGN are still trying to like really milk this thing where it's like, oh, the narrator in 3 is gonna be Spider, not Jake Sully, and like I want to move on. I want to see some other stuff to be not so impressed by. I think it was like a 5 out of 10. Like, it's got some good stuff, I guess, but like took you 13 years.
I could
really.
Yeah, 13 years, really? Come on,
really?
Man. Really? Yeah, I'm comfortable benching for a 6, but again, a lot of that is because it was due to my goodwill for the first one and the bits where it was playing into the strengths of the first movie with the world and the presentation. The way this came together story-wise really brings it down. Yeah, so it's not as good as the first one.
I think it really just shows what Avatar has been about. So yeah, I mean,
right.
So.
It's cool that one of the highest grossing things is an original IP.
Yeah, that's true. I'm glad.
That's all I got.
I'm glad it's not like sequel. Well, technically this is one of those sequels. So at least the highest one's an original idea. So that's cool. That's comforting. It's not just a sequel or a build up.
Well. Speaking of sequels,
do we
want to move right along?
All right. So
we got 1 down, 2 to go. So moving on up in quality to the next one.
So
is the second Knives Out movie.
Knife Out 2. There was more knives, and now they're gonna cut something this time.
The second knife.
I'd like the idea that with Knives Out, each title is like Rian Johnson making like a dish of sorts. So it's like Knives Out, Glass Onion, and then it's like something saute, and so then the whole franchise ends on like whatever
Meltzer.
dish he was like trying to make.
The Ultimate Avengers dish, that'd be cool. Although I think Glass Onion's a Beatles song, so that's probably where it came from.
And like they talk about that a lot, and I guess it's a dumb joke, but like Knives Out, Glass Onion, Netflix joint, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
So.
I'm gonna go ahead and put on a spoiler alert out of the gate because this was a best adapted screenplay.
Yeah, so best adapted screenplay.
Is that seriously is that because of the Among Us?
I like, but I mean, to your point, before we go on, I mean, I think this is one of those movies where you should see it all the way through before actually.
Yeah.
So. As little detail as possible. So spoilers.
If you can't have spoilers, just know it was good and move on.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think we're gonna get to that point. I enjoyed it a bit more, but spoilers.
Among Us.
Yeah,
is that why it got adapted screenplay?
I'd like to think, but then again, that's also indicative of one of my least favorite things about Knives Out, Glass Onion. But yeah, I mean, it's a sequel.
I guess I don't think it's going to get its Oscar.
No, it's not.
I think it's just there. For context, I guess when developing this, Rian Johnson, everyone's favorite Star Wars director, Rian Johnson mentioned that almost every famous murder mystery series that was a book had the contractually obligated tropical retreat story.
Okay.
And so Glass Onion was partially based off of those novellas. So like Death on the Nile or Evil Under the Sun, where like it's some sort of extravagant, lavish location is what he was.
This lovely vista.
He was trying to channel that like summer vacation energy.
Or Yeah, okay. I can see that.
But I don't think he didn't like lift from like a book's plot, so I don't think it can make. I don't think it can be a best adapted screenplay contender for that.
I mean, I think.
But
you're the mystery guy, so it comes to actual like mysteries and all that. I'm going to leave that to you. But I think in terms of being an adapted screenplay, I think the reason is because Knives Out's already an established franchise, and so I think
maybe
if it was the original Knives Out, I think it would have obviously been original screenplay. But it's not like Knives Out is clearly deriving inspiration from the original Knives Out, I should say. It's not like that was deriving inspiration from like a book or a novel or was based off of anything. But clearly Glass Onion is literally titled, like it has the subtitle A Knives Out Mystery, so clearly it's drawing, and the main character is just Daniel Craig again. Like he's kind of the link between the two. Because there really isn't, like, at least as far as I remember, Glass Onion really didn't play up as like, oh yeah, didn't you solve that mystery? That
you don't need to see Knives Out before seeing Glass Onion.
You really don't, in all honesty. If you're interested in one, you would be interested in the other, I would say, because I think both of these are relatively same ballpark quality wise. Question mark? But
I think so.
Yeah,
more or less.
Okay.
I guess to start off with the first one.
First one.
It's in a murder mystery market, I suppose you could call it, where almost everything these days is an adaptation of an Agatha Christie novel. Knives Out was really refreshing and still is, for the merit of it being an original mystery. That's nice to see. And it being a Rian Johnson movie, he tries very, very hard to subvert expectations, go above and beyond, and always keep you guessing. And that's admirable, and I think it's a good movie. But my problem with the first Knives Out is that it aims to subvert expectations to the point where I think it loses a little bit of its sight of what it's trying to be. Because, I don't know. Do we spoil the first one?
I mean, yeah, the spoilers.
Okay.
Spoilers.
Okay. It starts off as a straightforward murder mystery. Where, Daniel Craig is interviewing all the suspects, all the members of the family at the, true, some suspects. But the twist in the opening 10 minutes is that it tells you exactly how the guy died. And it introduces the house, the nurse character who is tending him, and she becomes the main character. And that's an interesting idea, but I think it hurts the movie significantly because once that cat is out of the bag, there's no mystery.
Yeah.
There's all the momentum that was there at the beginning is just kind of gone in exchange for this completely different movie that is just like the nurse trying to cover up this crime that doesn't even exist. And it's not really funny, even though it's insisting that it is. And by the end of it, it comes out and says, but there was another murderer the whole time without really earning that with actual detectiving. So it feels a little cheap by the end of it. And I also it's hurt a little more because it introduces a lot of colorful characters with Jamie Lee Curtis, among others, Chris Evans, without really doing anything with them. It just feels like they had suspects but forgot the part where they were supposed to flesh them out. So it feels like a lot of building blocks that could be arranged in a way that made a really, really cool new murder mystery for a modern audience. But it was trying so hard to be unexpected that it kind of stopped being a murder mystery.
Yeah.
I think that's its biggest problem.
Right. I mean, I am trying to remember the first one. I'm not gonna lie. I watched it on my laptop, and so I didn't get an ideal experience. But
Grant,
I'm sorry. These are
gotta see that frame rate dip in 4K.
The things I have to do when I'm in college.
I know.
And you're in college too, so you should empathize with me. So, in terms of the actual movie, there's that point where. To your point, they set up and they clearly show that the housekeeper character was responsible and they're trying to lay all the pieces. But I think in terms of being an actual mystery, I do think that all the other colorful characters are just window dressing, where it's they're there, they have their personalities, but you can't really feasibly pin down like someone who would genuinely do it, which I guess is why the twist of Chris Evans' character being the guy that did it all. I guess it's supposed to be such a big twist because he seems like so obviously the guy who would do it. You wouldn't pin it on him, but then it is completely on him. So, I mean,
but again, I just feel like they didn't match that against a mystery to earn it.
Yeah, again,
like it just kind of happened at the end.
Yeah,
like by the way, it was him.
It has all those it has like those fine elements that set up, but it's missing the mystery part of the story to really tie it together to really make it stand out. From my limited mystery experience. So
this is why I prefer Glass Onion, because I think it fixes that problem.
Yeah, like
a lot.
When I walked into Glass Onion, the thing was that I'll be up forward when I say this. I'm not the smartest guy when it comes to solving like a mystery before the answer is revealed with these stories, because so many times will I just see something and just kind of be lost and just not be able to kind of fully keep my head around everything. But having seen Knives Out, I think like a week before, I knew exactly kind of what to set my expectations to when I was going to another Knives Out movie. And that's why I was basically able to guess the entire mystery before, like basically once enough pieces had been laid out, like 15, 20 minutes in. But then like, obviously I don't feel like that was supposed to be the main thing that was supposed to keep you on your toes. Because there was
congratulations.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, I guess I'm kind of smart now, but
you've upgraded.
Yeah, there's I think the more bigger twists weren't supposed to be. Okay, I mean, spoilers.
Okay, spoilers.
It was obviously the Edward Norton character, but like the twist was that he isn't some like genius that was like setting us up here. Like it was supposed to satirize like he's a moron. He's this super
writing
rich,
off of the accomplishments of other people.
Yeah, and he let them succeed off of his success that he stole from someone else, and like it really didn't feel like it was a mystery about because at first they tried doing the whole thing where it's like, I'm going to throw a murder mystery party and I'm going to die and you're going to have to figure out who did it and tell the story.
Right.
And
so
then,
you're expecting him to die.
Yeah, but then the twist was that Daniel Craig's character literally predicts everything perfectly the second they get started, and then he's like, you weren't supposed to be here, but I extended gratitude to you and blah, blah, blah. But then it gets tricky because there's like a power outage. I'm getting this kind of mixed up a little bit. There was a power outage.
A lot of moving parts.
It was like, I know who, because the real mystery was that this, as it's revealed,
the way it's presented is that there are a lot of moving parts that don't make sense on their own until halfway through.
Yeah, like the real mystery turns out to be that this one lady was mysteriously murdered, and so then her identical sister goes to Daniel Craig and is like, hey, my sister was killed, but they're trying to make it look like suicide, but I don't think it was suicide. I want you to look into this. And that's why she gets this, she gets the box that was supposed to be, used to invite everyone to the titular Glass Onion, which is the name of the estate that Edward Norton's house is, and also this, bar that they mentioned in the movie that he named the house after and all that. But... And that's why it's supposed to be a twist.
So yeah, because essentially what happens is that it's revealed that everything you've been watching in the first half was actually taking place towards the end of this movie, events-wise. So the actual murder that was being investigated wasn't the murder mystery party. It was of her sister. Right. I think her name's Helen's sister. So you basically get to watch the movie twice. At first with no knowledge, being kept completely in the dark, but then with that revelation, you get to go through it again and try and piece it together.
Right. And so, and there's supposed to be the whole twist at the end where you think he actually kills her, because there's a part where Edward Norton is supposedly shoots the identical sister, but then they do the iconic Bible in the pocket trick to save her. And then, yeah, and so it clearly was supposed to be some satirization. And I don't think the actual mystery was supposed to be on the surface, but it was clearly trying to go above that. But yeah, and then I think there was some stuff that the reason this one didn't. I mean, I don't know where I would say between the first one and the second one. I don't know which one I would say I enjoy more.
I definitely prefer Glass Onion.
I think
is what I'll say.
I prefer the first. I don't think either of these movies are good comedically. I think that tends to be the weakest aspect to this franchise. Is just Ryan has this very. I mean, he kind of has this like
insistent tendency. I guess
insistent. He has this kind of SNL tier kind of comedy where it's like, oh, at the start, I'm kind of the dumb one, so I'm going to pretend this lamp is like an Alexa Echo Dot. Oh, I'm so quirky. Like, I know there's a point Red Letter Media made where it's like Ryan Johnson's characters want to kind of have this edge to them that they just don't. When like they were making that comparison to the Menu, where it's like everyone in that movie, everyone's like way more upfront. It's like, oh yeah, like they have way more edge to that, and like in these movies, like you just see that, and so.
You see traces of that, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. And again, like, there's just some elements that, like, I know this is a weird side point, but, like, when they were making a bunch of the revelations, again, I do feel like it's kind of still missing a lot of that full-around detective build-up to really make a lot of the shocking twists shocking, because there's a plot point where Dave Bautista, his character, like, dies before the second act twist. Or like the halfway twist.
He's the surprise murder victim. Yeah. Like you thought it was going to be Edward Norton, but it's Dave Bautista.
Yeah, but then the whole reason he got away with it was because there's a line he throws away where he's like, "Oh, make sure there's no pineapple in that because I don't dance with pineapples" or something like that. But apparently that was supposed to mean that he's allergic to pineapples and will literally die if he has any. And so it just kind of, I wish there was more. I like that line as a good kind of startup to like throwing those hints, but like it would have been crazy if like during a scene where they were trying to do like investigating and like breaking into his room, there was like a random EpiPen just in the background or just like a nice detail that is.
So you're saying
it's late.
Are you saying like you would have preferred that they went further with the hints?
Yeah,
like you thought it was like a one-time thing.
Some good detective work. Don't be so caught up with trying to be like beyond a mystery and going like avant-garde, not avant-garde, but like going beyond being just a mystery. Like have a mystery, but go beyond it as well.
Yeah. I think part of I'm okay with bits like that, but I think that it's less because, like you said, it was like excusable, because you're right, they probably could have gone further with that. I think the reason I was fine with it in the moment was because, again, having read and watched a lot of murder mystery stuff, like I've just become conditioned to that, so I picked it up and registered it as a hint.
Yeah, like it's.
But I should say, the best murder mystery thing that I have interacted with to this day is one of Agatha Christie's first books, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. That is a fantastic mystery, and I would call it like the gold standard of murder mysteries, because it takes, I want to say like it takes a lot of simple things that like aren't complicated. Like it's just a very simple series of events that like I won't spoil, but it ends up like walking you through them a couple times and twisting it into a really, really fascinating web of like different people in this community that, which ended up like those basic ingredients end up adding up to like just a shocking whole that like still rocks my world every time I read it. Like it's crazy. And so I think part of like what's hard about having so much in Glass Onion as opposed to something like Roger Ackroyd is that whenever you're tying it all together, like you said, it's going to take a lot more explanation as opposed to like just seamlessly doing it in the style of that book.
Yeah. So.
But I would also like to say that like mystery-wise, like that bombshell in the second half with like the sister makes it so that like the mystery isn't gone like it was in the first one. Like they're still trying to figure it out. And I think what like the pace, like the momentum of it's better too, because the Glass Onion, like the island in Greece, is a much more defined location, and like with the detective mystery part, they actually explore it more. So like that scratches like the finding clues itch that I wouldn't say the first movie really had, while also exploring the actual mansion
I think,
or something more.
Yeah, side topic, but like the location to me I think is simultaneously improved and kind of reduces from the original, because I like that production design a lot more. Like I actually really like that mansion location. I think it's like nice and just like the fun, like it has some really good just locales, like the pool and everything I think is fun. But at the same time, it felt way faker than the first movie. Because,
really,
I mean, well, see, part of the thing is that I wonder if this was because of COVID. Because I know at the start of the movie they do this whole COVID spiel where it's like, oh, it's 2020, we're locked in, we can't do anything. But then near the start, before they get on the boat to go to the Glass Onion Island, there's like, here, like take this like spray, which I guess in retrospect, I don't think it was supposed to be like some like big grand revelation as part of his plan, because remember, he's an idiot. I think it was just supposed to be some like it was supposed to be some reason why they aren't going to wear masks despite being set in 2020 and so there's all that. But I wonder if part of that, when they mentioned COVID, I wonder if that's why there's a lot of like scenes. Like, I know when there was a scene where Daniel Craig was interviewing the identical sister, and like they're clearly like sitting on like a patio, and like the patio itself felt real, but like everything around it felt like a green screen. It felt very like fake and just like really took me out of it. And I'm just
I think what boosted the location for me was just like how it was shot.
Yeah.
Because if it was just like a simple
these movies,
shot reverse shot thing, it probably would have
really good
looked worse.
Just considering all around.
The way the camera flows is very intentional.
I think Ryan has a very particular eye for how he wants to have his movies look, and I mean, I think I don't hate it. I think it's a nice look. I'd like to see maybe like,
and it's definitely
story.
It's definitely boosted too by the tension that's implied before the murder happens, because you have to wait for it. So I guess part of it too is that I wasn't really paying attention to like how fake it was or not. I was more so just swept up in the buildup of it all. So that probably helped it a lot too for me.
Yeah.
But I would also like to compliment the cast, because that was another thing that I didn't like about the first one. The cast is smaller in Glass Onion.
I believe so, yes.
So you get to spend more time focusing on all of them. And what's more, like, they don't just focus on them. Like, they spend a lot of time putting you in their perspective and not just the detective. Like, the entire first sequence of the movie is like that phone call of like them trying to open the box, and it's a great little space for you to really examine them and see their dynamics, their relationships, and like how they function for yourself.
Yeah, because they're like that friend.
So you have like a better bit.
Grew up.
Yeah. And so you have a better frame of reference. Right out of the gate, as opposed to Knives Out, which was like the family, really didn't think of
and
them.
Clearly they had their familial drama and all that, but
And I've seen this twice, and they also really, I think they did a really commendable job thinking about their characterization beyond just that opening, because everything from their outfits to the way they talk is really telling of like the larger whole of who they are. And my favorite example of this is actually when they show up to the dock with like the different masks that they have for COVID, because like the politician needs to seem cognizant of COVID, so she's wearing a mask.
Clearly. There's like the one party crazy one that's like, oh,
Dave
COVID
Bautista
doesn't exist, and like wears like
so she's like
the
wearing
little orange net like mask that doesn't do anything.
Right. Dave Bautista's wearing nothing, and then like the scientist guy is also wearing a mask. So like it's just little details like that really put it above the cast from the first one.
A lot of the really good movies
they
like to really
come
focus
off
on
more
these
as suspects.
details and really you know, and we see that with the movies these years, you know,
gives you more to chew on when you're trying to figure out who done it.
It really puts you into the conflict, you know. It could be anything. So trying to allude to the
ending
movie,
is definitely ending is definitely the foggiest part, where like she's like breaking everything.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and then like
I wonder, because there's that whole bit with the Mona Lisa, and I wonder what that was supposed to be about, because he's like, I have quite literally the actual genuine for real Mona Lisa. But
I think it was like poetic justice, where like he always talked about how he wanted to be remembered like the Mona Lisa, and in the end he destroyed the Mona Lisa. So like he technically became a part of the Mona Lisa's history like that.
He was responsible for destroying, well, quote unquote, but
technically. But like I think like the whole like fire joke where like it's playing Mona Lisa is kind of weird and atonal to like the mystery part. It's a little strange.
Because I think that's because it wants to do some like satirization of like a character like Edward.
Yeah, and like that edgy Saturday Night Live thing you were talking about too. It was like when I saw it the most there.
I feel like there's been that kind of trend recently. Like I feel like people have been talking about how there's like this satirization of like mega rich 1% people and all that, and like we've seen that stuff like Glass Onion, Triangle of Sadness. I think was in that category.
Yeah,
The Menu. I think
Violent Night. I guess
as well. Like
technically,
we've seen kind of a recent trend of that with a bunch of movies recently.
Yeah.
So I think this was Rian Johnson wanting to take a stab at it, I suppose, but
yeah, I guess he technically did it in the first one too.
Yeah, I just kind of
in the sense that like people were after wealth instead of being wealthy.
Yeah.
But, you know,
it's just...
I hope Knives Out 3 has the Muppets. It's not going to, but that sounds like a fun idea.
There's got to be a Muppet murder mystery out there somewhere.
There has to be. But I'm excited for the next one. Rian Johnson signed a 2-movie deal on Netflix for Knives Out sequels. So this is the first one. We'll wait for the third one.
Okay, so he's got another one.
Or the second one.
In the wings.
Yeah, for Netflix.
Okay.
And he's going to change the series to a Benoit Blanc murder mystery instead of a Knives Out mystery.
So he's going to build it around Daniel Craig rather than the first. Okay. I can respect that. Yeah. I'm fine with that.
I can respect it too. Props to like not requiring.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're not like
watch
trying
the
to
other
hang on
movies
to
as
like
homework.
the one that like everyone loved, because I think like people like really dug that movie when it came out, from what I remember. So I'm very glad that you're trying to actually build it around the character in the universe and drive the interest from that rather than saying.
And this might
like the member berries thing.
This might be because of MCU fatigue, but like props for not having a storyline that you have to follow and do your homework on.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the murder mystery guy, but like I feel like really good like murder mystery franchises or like those like particular characters, they usually tend to do the best when they have like a defined character, but you don't need that background. Like Lupin the Third kind of sticks out to me. I've only seen that like Castle of Cagliostro movie, but I feel like that was a really good...
You mean the bad guys?
Well, I'm just saying that film came out well before that other film.
Mr. Wolf.
You haven't really been talking about him all that much, but that's not important.
Well, because we're talking about the Oscars.
When it comes to these murder mysteries is that you have that defined character and you have the defined relationships and you know how they work, but you don't need extensive background knowledge. Like, having that good first one to kind of really establish those characteristics a little bit more heavily than later entries, I think that's kind of something you should look into. But, I mean, yeah, I like that this movie didn't require the absolute wind-up of, like, needing to see the whole first movie necessarily to enjoy the second one. I think I like that. That's fine. I'm fine with that.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean...
So, yeah.
It's a cool, crisp 7 out of 10. It's nice.
I'm comfortable with an 8.
So
I was considering a 9 in the heat of the moment on a first watch, but like upon further examination, seeing it again, I'm fine with an 8. That's enough.
If I watch it again, I'm not sure if it's going to fluctuate that or Knives Out. So yeah, I'll get around to it one day. But
you know what you have gotten around to?
I mean, that's my wish.
Yeah.
So.
Your last one, or just?
I mean, I got a lot more. I'd like to think, God willing. Of course,
okay.
So, but
well, that brings us to the grand finale,
because this is probably going to be like one of the most. I'd like to think this is going to be one of the most passionate segments we're going to ever record for this channel.
Is this the best since we lost Everything Everywhere All at Once to the records?
Right.
Is this about to be the best movie we talked about?
If we're not counting everything that we recorded before we lost, if we're just going off of
everything that will actually be published.
Yeah, according to everything we published, if we're just going off of that list, then this, as of right now with this recording, because who knows what happens in the future, but as of this moment, this is by a landslide the best movie we've talked about. We've talked about like 12 movies to be fair, but like hands down.
I'm gonna let you take it from here.
Okay. Yeah, because you'll see. So,
you'll see.
Our final film for this episode 6, that we're going to talk about is the recent animated film Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Put the poster up. Yeah, okay.
Up for Best Animated Feature from DreamWorks Animation.
DreamWorks. I always say that they're like a wild card animated wise because Disney's been in a slump.
Definitely,
they have been just not making good stuff, and so. In the animated front, that's really kind of thrown a toss-up in the air because I don't think there's really kind of been like a follow-up. Like DreamWorks at their best, and you'll see, at their best can really throw down and put some really good stuff on film. But at the same time...
But more often than not, like, they're having to do other stuff.
Right. But at the same time, like, not everything is going to be, like, perfect for them. And just, like, they're not going to always be as consistent, I would say. Because Pixar at first had, like, a really, really good level of consistency. But then, once 2011 hit, then they started fluctuating. But DreamWorks, again, they've been all over the place. That's why I call them a wild card, because you can get anything from a 1 out of 10 to a 6 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10, anywhere in between. And there hasn't really been anyone else in regards to animation studio-wise that I think has kind of consistently been a front-runner. Like, Blue Sky shut down, sadly, and didn't really have much going on. Illumination's just always kind of been at the bottom.
Sony's been... doing stuff.
Sony's been all over the place because they went from the Emoji Movie to Spider-Verse, which is basically redemption for the Emoji Movie, I suppose. But
an apology for the Emoji Movie.
Yeah, they had to make one of the biggest envelope pushers of recent memory for animation to make up for the commercial they made. But
right.
So, we're here now, and so Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is the second DreamWorks film of 2022, first being The Bad Guys, and I think The Bad Guys is fine. We were supposed to cover it.
They're both
light. I think it's very lacking writing-wise, but I think it's very nice visually speaking. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Mm-hmm. Very light. And so
they both they started the trend of DreamWorks trying to do a similar thing to Sony, where they also push the envelope, like you said, with animation.
Yeah, I think the biggest common thread between Bad Guys and Last Wish definitely has to be how it visually presents itself. Because with the Bad Guys, they like using like that kind of cell shaded like speed lines and all these different elements.
But in Bad Guys, that was more to evoke like heist flicks,
like
or like Lupin the Third, Lupin the Third. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well,
don't kill me.
But yeah, clearly that feels more in line with that aesthetic. But then, as we'll see in like The Last Wish, they use like a lot of Spider-Verse stuff. They kind of, I think that's been a very common thread, at least in terms of the look of Last Wish. I know we're kind of already jumping into it, but a lot of people say it looks a lot like Spider-Verse, but never has anyone really gone on to say like it just rips off Spider-Verse. Because I think how The Last Wish visually shows itself is very distinct and it definitely crafts its own identity. Like, it uses that idea of like using frames as like a picture, and there's a lot of great just like visual storytelling from whether it's like how characters act, especially with how characters emote and use body language. Like, this movie makes me think of stuff I don't normally like really put too much thought into, and really makes me appreciate a lot of like the different just effort and elements that were used in this movie. So like, when a character has like a simple face reaction to something, it feels very telling and very in line with just how they are. It's like, it goes back to your glass onion point, but I think it's like that on steroids. Like, every action, every line of dialogue, every like choice, it's all committed to going towards this main sense of storytelling. And so, yeah, again, getting ahead, but I think the build-up for me was quite interesting, because I saw trailers, and I think much like a lot of people, I didn't care that much to begin with. Like, I clearly saw there was some like kind of Spider-Verse-esque kind of stuff. Because the trailer I saw was basically just the first 6 minutes, really, where it's that opening scene and then him at the doctor's office, and then
they count the deaths.
Yeah, they count the deaths, and then like the last like 20 seconds were just like a bunch of kind of like random clips to say now he's going to go on the adventure, something like that, and it felt very disconnected. And that's where I kind of like my brain kind of filled in and said, DreamWorks, so I'm not going to have too much going for it. It's just going to be another kind of just
and it's not like you'd be forgiven for thinking that too, because like the first one
that's how the first one worked out. And like there's two key characters that they didn't show Jack Horner at all in the marketing. I knew nothing about him.
John Mulaney was not advertised. Yeah. That surprised me. That was weird.
I think there was
not
there
weird,
was one
but
or
like
two
I was
shots.
not ready.
I know, especially in the later trailers, I think they were throwing around a little bit more, but at least to my knowledge, I don't remember really having any impact on my
Grant,
mind.
We haven't put up the spoiler alert yet.
Yeah, so
we haven't put up the spoiler alert yet.
Okay, put a spoiler alert well ahead of time.
You called him by his name.
Well, people haven't seemed to fully commit to what his canonical name is, so you can't pin that on me. But,
okay.
Yeah, okay. So again, I myself was not really super interested at first, but then once it came out, it got a bunch of rave reviews, and then a bunch of people I listened to were like, "Yeah, this is the best thing. This is the best animated movie that's come out this year." And I'm like, "All right, okay, well, I'm gonna be the judge of that. I'm gonna go to the theater. I tagged you along. I was gonna go in. I was gonna sit down. I want to form my own.
I was
opinion.
Very happy to go with you because I had already seen it.
Absolutely. I wanted to enjoy this film. I wanted to, because it's a clear bar, and I think there's been so many times I've seen expectations of how people react to a movie. I'm just like, yeah, I'm just not feeling it, guys. I think it's because I'm just way pickier with movies and stuff, and I just complain about so many dumb things that people don't care about. It's just I'm sure it's gonna have some nice stuff to it. Maybe it'll be a little bit different. And then I watched it, and it has slowly become my second favorite movie of all time, at least right now. But
out of nowhere,
absolutely nowhere. I had expectations, but I was like, well, let's just show me what you got. What do you have for me? And then it put a clip of, I'll send this to you, but put a clip of WWE wrestler Sabu leg dropping John Cena through an announce table. This thing just destroyed me with how much I was I was not ready for how good this film was going to be. I was not prepared. I was not ready to pick it up. And I went through the movie and I'm at a loss of words of how remarkably amazing they have made this movie. I wanted to just share this, and the way that they take this story and how they present this story and how they leave this story with you as a person, I am floored at just how amazing it is. And I want to say so many nice things about this movie. I want to say so many.
We will.
Yes. So,
I guess to begin with,
the plot. I guess
I've seen Last Wish so many times. I was in the same situation like you, where I heard a lot of good stuff, and I was like, okay, but is it good? And then it was.
It was.
Rewatching it recently-ish, it's really highlighting to me how much of an improvement the look is, because I should say Shrek is I'm lukewarm with Shrek. I don't have any major problems with it. I don't like how Shrek movies before Last Wish looked.
Okay.
And I hope they go forward with the Last Wish look for Shrek 5.
Right.
Because I think the first one came out at a time where people were, again, especially the ones who weren't at Pixar, were still finding their footing with 3D animation. So the first Shrek had some rugged animation. It looked very realistic, and they kept that style throughout the rest of the series. And I don't think that lends itself well to a fairy tale vibe that it's clearly trying to emulate and then satirize after playing into it, because whenever it's trying to be mystical, nothing about the colors really make it look magical, and whenever there's a musical number or an action sequence,
it still feels muted.
It feels kind of constrained, right? Because the style they've chosen just makes it so that it's at least partially bound by realism, even if it's a little bit in I don't know, the later entries. It's just I don't think it's there. And Last Wish looks so good because, again, it feels like they emulated Spider-Verse a little bit, but instead of trying to evoke comic book feels, they play around with the colors and Avatar, visually, the frame rate dipping is actually good.
The frame rate dipping has
because it's working towards emulating a fairy tale book. I feel so whereas Spider-Verse is trying to evoke feelings of a comic book, and Mitchell's versus the Machines is going for Katie's doodles to reveal more about her character. Last Wish is very more
fairy tale.
It's like someone painted a fairy tale book and like it moves.
Yeah,
and I think that works so well.
The phrase
like
paintbrush aesthetic.
Grit. Have you seen the paintbrush strokes on Puss's hat?
I haven't.
And his sword, and like how they're rugged, that highlights his rough and tough character.
The phrase like paintbrush aesthetic has been very prevalent when discussing the look of this movie, and I think it's all.
But like you're seriously right about like that, how like it's very intentional, because like Puss has like much more rugged and like you can tell there are like brushstrokes there, and like Kitty's like look is like you see no paintbrush strokes because like I guess she's more suave. And like again,
that's how they do the coloring, because Puss is like
more clean, I guess, than Puss.
Yeah, and I think just losing my train of thought here, but I think one thing that I really enjoyed was with character design is that one thing about when I look at some of the older like Puss, where Puss was in like Shrek 2 or like his first spin-off movie. One thing I feel off-putted and I didn't realize I wanted so much is that Last Wish nails the eye look. Because, like, the way that they show him is that he has, like, all green eyes. And, like, I didn't realize how much that was going to make me connect more. Because I think it's a much, much more visually pleasing look. And it really makes me connect more just because it plays into that aesthetic. And I think it really helps his character design more. Because those older ones, again, they play into the more rough aesthetic. And, like, it's, again, I think it works well because in that first Shrek, it was clearly supposed to be, like, the antithesis of, like, the standard Disney, like, princess story and all that. It was supposed to be very crude, crass, and very kind of, like, ugly of sorts, which was supposed to, like, play into what that movie wanted to get into. And I think that's how they found that identity. But to your point, as it kind of moved on later and technology got better, I really think that a lot of what these later Shrek movies wanted to aim for didn't go as well visually. But to bring it back to Last Wish, considering it's not really like a complete redefining of how it looks, but like it takes that basis and then it takes a far better direction artistically with the visuals and really just merges the two together seamlessly. And so visually, this thing is just absolutely unparalleled.
I will say one thing that I do wish they tried to maintain with the visuals, because it was there at first, but I don't think it stayed there the whole time. And like this is literally like the only criticism I have is the death montage where it's counting the deaths and like it's like on those stitched Spain tapestries. I kind of wish like it's like quick. There's a style. There's a beat, and I wish there was a bit more of that. I'm not really sure I can put to words like what I liked about it so much, but it communicated like a sense of humor that way, and it communicated information very effectively. I feel, and
that's not really a deal.
That's not to say that the rest of the movie doesn't. But, that's not to say that like the rest of the movie doesn't do it badly. But I latched onto that a lot, and I wish there was a bit more. But that's it.
It's not really a nitpick for me personally, but. I see what you're saying.
So spoilers?
Yeah, okay. So actual, really, for real, spoilers if you, and like, do genuinely see this movie, like, actually support this in any way that you can, please. But in that case, 10 out of 10, I mean, second favorite movie, it's kind of already a dead giveaway, but like, clearly. But, yeah, so.
9 for me.
The plot, shall we?
The biggest prop that I'm going to give to the narrative right out of the bat, and this might seem simple at first, but I swear it means something, is how character-driven it is. Yeah. And I know you agree with me on that. Yeah. Because in a movie about a quest, where the obstacles in a quest are usually manufactured or external to the characters, the story beats and obstacles in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish are the characters.
Yeah, they're purely character driven.
And like there are like it's a spaghetti western style movie where like there are a whole bunch of characters and like their back and forth is the quest and is the story. And I mean that like literally and figuratively.
Is what it really drives it, is because I've loved seeing how people dissect between Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Jack Horner and Death. Everyone says that they're like villains / antagonists, but what I think, to your point, makes that dynamic never feel like tired or worn out is that each one of those characters is bringing something entirely different to the overall conflict.
Yes.
Because obviously Goldilocks and the Three Bears is like more of a... I don't even really see them too much as the antagonists per se, because...
I wouldn't call them that at all.
Yeah, because like their whole role was like they wanted to get Puss's help. Like they weren't trying to hunt him down or like kidnap him or anything. They were like, we want to hire you so you can help find us something.
Mm-hmm. And then they become rivals.
Yeah, and then because they both share the same goal, but clearly they don't want the other to do it. They clearly are adversaries and are butting heads. But then once they have finally wrapped it all up, they clearly see each other and are like respected. And they're like, yeah, good to see you. And all that jazz.
Right.
But so you have that going on, and there's that like redemption, and that kind of plays into that whole subplot where it's like the family and the Three Bears, and like really playing into that value no matter where it comes from. That's a nice little, really well done subplot that I think it had some really good build up to it. Because what I think really made that subplot in particular work well was that there's the big twist. Well, I shouldn't say twist, but there's the revelation before the final climax where it's like, my one wish was that I wanted to find an actual family. Like, I know that you've hired me, like, you've taken me in, but I want, like, actual parents and all that. But I think what really took me back was that they didn't, like, begrudgingly go their own ways and just split off before reforging the relationship at the end. But it's like, they clearly knew that, but it's like, well, we want to give you what's best. And they still were, like, acting as a family of sorts despite this big revelation, which really took me back. Like, I was like... Because I think, like, there's the boss baby. Just weird side note. It's like, no, the parents got away. We did all that work.
That was dumb.
It's just, sleep. This isn't working out, I guess, you know. But, yeah, I think how these characters work, ironically enough, despite the majority of the cast being anthropomorphic animals, it's very human. It's very... Mm-hmm. This feels like this feels like what people would do in this situation. In this like crazy, wacky, wild scenario that revolves around this magic wish. And so you have something really sympathetic with Goldilocks, but then you juxtapose that with Jack Horner, who's like a cartoonish sociopath. That's like, I literally want to own everything. It's all mine.
No, Jack. Jack. You can't, Jack, you can't do that, Jack.
Idiot. What? But, yeah, it's really good because a lot of people really like Jack Horner's character because they say there's been that trend where there's the villain, but they're misunderstood or you don't know the full story or blah, blah, blah and all that. But they're redeemed, but Jack is literally just like, his backstory was, oh no, he got one-upped one time by Pinocchio and he just grew hate from that. And he's like clearly doing wrong things and I wonder how much he's like aware of that, but like, there's that one part in the movie where he has to, like, get across a canyon, and he used all the people he took with him to make a human bridge, and then due to his own, like, carelessness, he just killed all of them except one, and he's like, well, you know what they say, can't bake a pie without losing a dozen men.
Sweet mother of goose, Jack!
So, but yeah, like...
Yeah, I think
he felt like
Death and Jack are, like...
He feels like just a straight-up
best villains.
The movie, like, clearly says that with the...
I've ever seen in Shrek.
Yeah. What took you so long? Like, and it works so well, because it plays into his character. It's a clear establishment of him as a villain. And it adds more to the dynamic. And so, I think there's...
I also think he's a great foil to Death, who is a completely, like, dramatic, thematic, serious villain. Because one's comedic and the other is dangerous. Yeah. Death, and so they're both very distinct villains.
Here, because...
Yeah. But they're both very distinct in different ways, and like in a way where like one fills in for what the other doesn't have. Because like Shrek needs a good bad guy. That's part of the joke. Like, I remember Shrek movies based off of their bad guys mostly. And so to have not one but two that like fulfill very different roles while still complementing each other,
I think
works really, really well.
Well, we have to... Death, I think, is probably the best thing going for this movie. Or I think Death plays well into the theming, which is, for me at least, my favorite part revolving this movie. Because, again, you kind of... I think what really, really makes this movie stand out is how mature it is. Is because I think the reason the marketing didn't capture me was that I was just thinking about like, it's just going to be a quest. It's probably going to be dumb. They'll have some jokes along the way. I was completely ignorant of the fact that the main driving force is going to be like this fear of living your life to the fullest extent possible, or just like cherishing the value of the life that you have. And so Death's like 3 scenes are all like absolute showstoppers because they play into that one idea and pose the question to Puss, who in turn is like, well, I think one of the best strengths about this movie is that you can really put yourself in Puss's position. Like, that opening scene is just such a fun intro sequence where you see so much of his character and how everyone just loves him so much. And then he gets to like have this insanely fun like music number where he's just like, how he gets to like talk about like, oh yeah, like I've done all this awesome stuff, and he gets to play into it. But then
he's never been touched by a blade.
Yeah, I know. And that's also another amazing part of that piece is that there's really well-placed foreshadowing that doesn't feel too on the nose. It just plays into his fun, cocky nature. And it tops it off with that insane, like, giant sequence where it's, like, trying to attack the city, but, like, he's doing it so effortlessly, and he's, like, he's just killing it, and he's doing so good. But then it takes such an interesting twist because right after basically seemingly being in a place where nothing can hurt him, he, like, dies. And it's such a bizarre, like, take back. You're like, oh, okay. Which then leads into the whole setup with him at the doctor's office and playing around and kind of almost taking a somewhat kind of dark comedic tone with it, where he's like, "Oh yeah, like
but it's still comedic
before.
because like it's still comedic because he's not afraid yet.
Yeah, like because there's that one exchange where he's like, "Puss,
that's the important thing."
He's like, "Doc, relax. I'm Puss in Boots. I'm not gonna die. You kidding me?" And like it's really amplified well by again a lot of that body language and expression, and especially the voice acting too. I was really taken back. Like everyone is going at 110. Voice acting wise to really bring out the best with their characters. I think Antonio Banderas in particular was one of the highlights, especially
I think this is the best job he's done in a Shrek movie.
I think this might be one of his best acting roles, like period, from what I've seen from him. Like he was it was insanely well done. And I might be getting the name wrong. It's relatively new, I think, but Wagner Moura, I believe, the guy that played Death, 10 out of 10, yes. That's like one of my favorite voice acting performances. The two of them, they were really good foils for one another. But crap, I was losing my train of thought. So yeah, I mean, there's all that setup, and I think there's all that's going on. But that first scene where you get Death, I think, is where everything really starts to set in, because you have everything you need with that setup, with that intro, and with the doctor scene. But then you have the setup, and I know like people dissected this scene because how well done it is, but there's that clear setup where he's like, there's almost like, trying to word this. Sorry when I get so favorite movie, but like he's always kind of like recanting like what Puss in Boots has been about for so long. Where he's like, well, if it isn't Puss in Boots himself, and like there's all this like history almost because. It's clearly
what stood out to me was that all of the traits that he highlighted, like the iconic cape, the hat, boots,
the feather,
they were all surface level and physical, like nothing about his personality or who he is, because like that's all he made himself. Yeah. Like he made himself the hat, the feather, the boots, and nothing else.
Before this movie, that's actually you're making me like this movie even more now because like
you were ready.
Yeah, because up until that point, I don't think anyone really thought much of Puss in Boots. Like in Shrek 2, he's a fun little side character.
I thought he was like a joke character.
Yeah, he's a fun side character to tag along, but there's not really any depth to him. There wasn't really anything going on for him all that much.
And now he's my favorite Shrek character.
He goes on this quest. He opens up about everything he's done, his past, and he's being vulnerable, and he's just it feels like he really gets to be that fearless hero he really shows himself to be, but in a way that doesn't feel like some like dumb, well, shouldn't be dumb, but like doesn't feel like some fake fictional movie, but like an actual person. Like it feels like this insane takeaway that you can take with you, and you can like move beyond just watching a movie. It's nuts, man. It's insane. Why can't more movies do this?
It got real. I don't know, man. I would like to go back to the quest bit for a sec, because like going back to how character-driven it is, the map I think is what of the Dark Forest is what highlights that to me the most, since it changes to match the faults and characters depending on their insecurities. So it's one thing to like have that as like an obstacle, because like I can think of plenty of movies like Jumanji that have like
the obstacle that
this map like has rhymes and like for every obstacle, but they really commit to the bit with like the rules of the map, where like whoever holds it changes the quest.
Because you get
and like
because you get
and like it follows it
to a T. And like because you get Puss, and there's a lot that like revolves around death clearly. And, like, there's also, like, the Cave of Lost Souls, which gets reincorporated into that really good scene. And then, like, you get Kitty, and then she has, like, loneliness, which I think was really insane, because she clearly talked about trying to be, like, the solo act and, like, cutting off ties from everyone. But then seeing that get played back into what was going on with Puss was really insanely well done.
Where she bonds with Puss again, and it's really sweet.
What they had, that was really heartwarming.
I love Puss and Kitty. They're so sweet together. I didn't care at all in the first movie. Why do I care now?
Other movies, I get angry, I throw the popcorn, I scream, and I don't want to see it. But here, in this film, I want it to happen. I want them to go on. I already felt heartbreak in La La Land.
They follow the map rules. They follow the rules so well to the point where like
you get that
there's a whole action sequence around it.
Like nostalgia.
There's a whole action sequence around it where like
and there's that also,
they're fighting over the map, and like whoever holds it like at the cabin.
Like that was a really fun way to like play around with the environment.
It's just like they don't just follow the rules; they use the rules to like make thrilling action.
To like launch off it. I think there's this. I forget the exact term, but there's like some writing principle or this idea called like Chekhov's gun or something, where the idea is every element that you present in your story has like vital use throughout the story, which is why that's like insanely good. So like something as dumb as like Puss being named Pickles gets reincorporated into a very well placed joke at the end of a scene. And so there's something as small as that, but so many different like elements that actually go off towards the resolution. I think the one that I'd highlight the most is the first and last confrontation with Puss and Death, because that first one is basically the movie posing the big question to Puss of like, are you going to live your life? Are you going to like take it and like run with it? Are you going to actually like stand up and fight? But clearly at first, no, he doesn't, because he's not in a position to do that. He's very scared. He's never been confronted with that, but he goes through the journey and he like builds all those relationships, and then he gets these memories and he like rekindles and really learns what it means to do that. And so you get to that final confrontation, you get hit with that line where he says, "I'm done running," and he picks up that sword, and the sword to me has a lot of really good symbolism behind it, because I feel like that's what he's been living his life through, is how he's like done everything through that sword, and all of his that's why I think everything he's done has been built around it. So to see that get taken away from him for the majority of the movie is really like interesting towards his character. And so then they play with it where like he starts to get back into it and he's going to rob Jack Horner. Like you have Perito, who we've left out so far. Shame on us for leaving out another amazing character. But he gives him like the stick sword as like a sign of support, and like he's getting back into it, but he's clearly not ready. But there's that massive change, because then much later, once they like go through the river, he kind of loses his beard and also gets that like small, he gets that little tiny dagger with him as well.
Gatito blade.
The Gatito blade, of course. Spanish. I took Spanish too.
Say hello to it, yeah.
And so, and then that gets reincorporated in the final fight where it looks like he loses his sword again, but he uses the relationships that he builds from in this journey to get his sword back, to show that he's not alone. Like, this is why I want it to win Best Animated Feature. Where was this in
It's not.
Where was it?
I'm sorry, Grant.
Where was it?
Nowhere. Also, there's also like a nice dichotomy, not just like between Puss and like himself, but also like, again, like how they follow Perito's advice about smelling the roses versus Jack just like sacrificing his men. Like, again, you get different things out of how every character like responds to the obstacles. And it also brings out the characters in like the way like it's interesting that I think it's interesting how the main trio essentially like use each other. Like they're not team friendship because they're using each other. Not Perito, but Puss and Kitty are like using themselves and Perito as a means to an end, to the point where like they make Perito carry the map because they would rather they would rather reach the end instead of like deal with like what's inside of them.
Right.
which ironically makes them deal with like what's inside of them because of Perito.
Yeah. And like the way, like that scene when they're like going through like what everyone else is going through their minds, like again, that plays again into the whole like expression where he's like, oh, this map looks really good. He's like, oh, but I shouldn't hold it. It's your quest. But instead of like trying to like fumble around and like use words, all they do is they both look at each other, give him a nice small nod, and let him hold the map in unison. Like, there's so much storytelling in like a couple of frames where an average movie would fumble around for minutes on it. Well, not minutes, but like it would take so much time just fumbling around to get to that information. The movie just gives it to you clearly, and it lets you pick up on that. And I think that's why it goes so well.
One criticism I've heard is that like there should have been more obstacles with like Puss and Kitty, but like given their characters at that point in the movie and like considering what smart characters would do, like it makes total sense that they'd give the map to Perito because like of course they wouldn't want to deal with like the Cave of Infinite Sorrow.
Why would you want to go through the clearly obvious path? And I think that plays well into their characters at this point because I feel like they still haven't gone through that development and they're still like opportunistic and they're still a bit more on the selfish side instead of actually like seeing the value of these relationships that they have built.
Which is also great because there is a very clear journey built off from that starting point. Once Puss does get to the Cave of Memories, that's like usually the point where like there'd be a falling out because like, I used to be great. But like instead, by the time he gets to like the cave and like he's tempted to revert back to the person he was, he doesn't even like think about it.
It's a moment of self-reflection because he's like, was the legend just too big to actually live this life? And that plays well because
so like the last hour isn't rendered completely useless.
I know. It's built upon character development. We have developed the character. It really
goes to show. Because, like, I don't know, in bad animated movies like Ice Age or something where, like, the goal is just, like, get from point A to point B.
Just do the thing.
It really goes, like, the 4 or 5 extra steps to bring out the most in everyone, like you said. And I think through that, it really is inverting, like, the standard fairy tale quest trope. But, like, instead of, like, doing it for, like, comedic value, it's more dramatic. You know?
Right.
Like, they're doing the quest thing, but, like, they're having it be internal.
Yeah, again, to your point.
Instead of external.
Character-driven. Like, the reason why it works so well is because these characters are incredibly well fleshed out and play well with each other. Even though, I mean, there isn't too much interaction, I would say, between different characters. Like, there's basically, they're grouped off into their own, like, I guess sections, if you will. But they do also interact every now and then.
But it is like the dichotomy of like how they respond to the same situations. That is like the most fascinating part to me.
I think, and this is where I want to bring up the end, because I think the ending is very well done on a couple of levels. So, it starts off basically where Puss confronts, Puss and Death have their last confrontation, but Puss is able to fend him off because he's like accepted the whole life, which is, I would argue is like, probably the thematic climax with this movie, or at least emotionally. I think there's definitely a climax.
Yeah, like they fight Jack at the end, but that's the climax.
Yeah. But then it's really nice because instead of like wasting time just kind of like wrapping up, the rest of the movie is basically everyone else getting the climax that they deserve for what they've gone through. So Puss gives the wish to Kitty and says, "You've clearly said what you've wanted." But then she's like, "Oh no, I don't need it. I have you all along." And so that's a really nice exchange there. And then they play well into, like, Jack Horner gets back in the mix. I know we messed out all the details, but then they basically reincorporate the opening scene because, like, Jack Horner's, like, a giant now, and they have to, like, take him on. But then they work with Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And we kind of already got that resolution earlier before this point because Goldilocks kind of already saved that when she saved Baby Bear instead of taking the wish. So they're clearly on the same page. And then they actually destroy the wish altogether, so no one gets the wish at the end, and then Jack tries to get it, but then because of his greed and selfishness...
What did I do to deserve this?
I mean, what specifically?
Terminator reference. Thumbs down.
Yeah. But yeah, like, I think that works, because not only does it naturally tie up everything and give everyone what they want, but it's a great takeaway that you don't need some crazy world-changing wish to get what you want. It's just right there, and you gotta look for it. It's a great takeaway. It's It's so well done.
What a great message.
It really is.
Truly an elevation of the animated medium as a storytelling device.
And like, that's the thing, is that everyone's always like, oh, it's an animated movie, it's for kids. Like, no, you can use animation to do all these crazy, insane, imaginative things to make these stories that stick with people. And this is a prime example of that. This is how you do it. Like, you know why everyone has been going insane over this movie and is like said, oh, like, imagine James Cameron spending 13 years on Avatar 2 only to get outdone by the Shrek spin-off sequel. You know why? It's because of how crafted this movie is. It's because of how much went into it. It's how thorough it's done and how well done it's done. Like, I can't pin down my favorite scene because I just say the whole movie at this point. But, like, the one that I always point out to... The perfect scene I'd point out to, at least for me, is the intro. Is because, much like my other favorite movie, La La Land, it does basically everything I love about that scene, but within the context of this movie. Because right off the bat, it's clearly well shot. It's got a lot of great cinematography. It's very colorful. It's very clear to show off a lot of what's going on visually. But at the same time, it's using this like song as a way to get you into, like, I guess, for lack of a better word, the world. I mean... I know La La Land, that's dumb because it's L.A., but L.A.'s a foreign place.
L.A. Land.
But back to Puss in Boots, like, it's clearly getting you into this like world and getting you into the story, but at the same time, it's laying down like very obvious but very subtly placed like seeds of like what you can expect from the story. So to your point, that line, "Who's never been touched by a blade? Puss in Boots is never afraid." To see him immediately be confronted with that and to wrestle with that lays so much of that character development he goes through. And I think why it works really well because the music is also incredibly well done with this movie. I think there's so many tracks that I think capture it well, and I think the one that I want to highlight the most would definitely play into that opening scene where you start off and he's going through the party and he's like playing the little guitar, and like it's clearly just being this really fun upbeat song, but then it gets interrupted because the governor comes in. And then he's like, that's it, crash the party and stop him. But then he clearly says, hey, like, let's have some fun with this. Like, this is a party. Where's the music? And so then they incorporate all that, like, fun music you had at the start, mixed in sync, mind you, with all this, like, sword fighting that he's doing. So not only are you being
it's
treated...
like a symphony.
Not only are you treated visually with a really well choreographed, like, action scene where he's, like, he's sliding down the stairs and he's blocking all these swipes and then he does, like, a somersault midair and, like, blocks another sword. He's doing all that visually, but at the same time, like, rhythmically and, like, audibly with the music, it's playing into it while still building up with what it's gone through. And so you have all that going on until we hit this next crescendo where the giant gets introduced, and it's a very interesting kind of shift musically because it kind of stops being, like, all that upbeat, and you get these, like, loud drums to really indicate, like, how big the giant is and how much of a threat. And it's interesting because then... it moves on and it introduced an element of like peril because there's the kid you see at the start that gets taken by the giant, and there's to indicate that there's like these strings and like you kind of get that heightened sense like, oh crap, like this is going to be an actual problem. But then you like juxtapose that with like Puss, like there's this reincorporation, like Puss is like still being that confident self that he is, and he literally just like launched through the air to take on the giant to really play into that. And then to me, the part that always really gets to me is that last section where when he's, they do that joke where they do the Spanish Splinter and then he gets, like, thrown into, like, a house, but he's perfectly fine. And then he has, like, the cup of coffee to get energized. But, just trying to word this all together. There's that part where, like, he jumps out and he's, like, running across the rooftops and he's going absolutely insane and he's just covering it. But you have the people in the crowd that are watching and, like, I'm trying to, like, figure out, there's, like, it's not like a chant of sorts, but like they're really just like cheering him on as he's doing all of this. And it, in a way, obviously he still needs to go through this journey to really fully envelop the full message, but it's almost like a foreshadowing to that final message of sorts. Of like, you're seeing that kind of level of confidence and you don't know everything behind what's going on with him yet. But to see that like confidence in him taking up that role, at least on that kind of surface level at first, really helps to kind of highlight what that ultimate takeaway is going to be. And that's all wrapped up in just like this insane over-the-top action set piece that is just like burned into my mind with how just incredibly stylish and well done it is. Like, it is how it's how you start a movie. Like, those first 5 minutes.
The only way.
Are like, the thing is, this movie is so well done. It's like a gold standard for me now. So I'm like, all right, what movie I'm watching? This is what you want to do? Let's look at.
And then Grant went to see Ant-Man 3.
Yeah. No, I'm not joking. I'm not joking. I saw Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania last night, and there's bits where I'm like, I know Puss in Boots is in a theater down the hall, and this is reminding me of stuff that Puss in Boots has done, and it's making me realize why this doesn't work and why this does work. It's a favorite movie. Where it stands right now, it sits as my second favorite movie, and who knows? Could it give La La Land a run for its money? It maybe could. It might.
Wow.
It might.
That's high praise.
The more this film has sat with me, the more it just really hits with me. Like, it feels like the movie I was always waiting for. And,
nice.
I'm just so happy about this movie.
That makes me very happy to hear.
I'm so thankful. And,
good.
Yeah, I'm tearing up a little.
I'm not done. I'm not done talking about it. Like, you made a great point about, like, the action, how they sync up, like, the beats with
it's like an Edgar Wright
like
movie
what's happening, the
where...
action. Yeah, and they keep that the whole time.
They do.
Like, the one that sticks out to me the most is, like, when they're fighting in the bar, Death and Puss, like, how he, like, twirls around his hooks to, like, the beat of the song, and then, like, the last bomb is, like, when he catches them to, like, fight.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
One that stuck out to me is that...
I also like the tone of the action.
Yeah, exactly. It captures so much.
Is, like, very intentional, too, because... You talked about how, like, fun it was in the beginning. Yeah. Like, come on, guys, this is a party. Play some music. But, like, every action sequence after the bar is almost the exact opposite.
Yeah,
in that
like,
Puss is almost intentionally and trying to avoid it because he's afraid of dying.
Yes.
Like, when you have, like, the final standoff on the star, they're all looking at each other, and, like, the only one who doesn't want to fight is Puss. Yeah.
I think, to your point, the one that really sticks out to me is halfway through when they have that fight with everyone, like, next to the river. Like, I think there's a very interesting... I think the way that they really juxtapose that opening scene, because I think the way that they did a lot of the choreography was the same, because in the opening scene, there's, like, a shot where he's, like, running across the rooftop, and you don't really see his reaction, because you kind of already know what it's about. And, like, the giant throws down the bell, and, like, he clearly dodges it. And then there's that second strike, and, like, he kind of jumps up in the air, and he's, like, really, like, just excited and happy to really get into that.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
In that second one, what happens is, like, one of the bakers does and, like, trips and, like, slams down a butcher's knife, and you see his, like, frightened reaction as he's running towards everything. Almost being, like, thrust into the situation. And then...
Did you notice that, like, it was more from, like, a ground level the second time as, like, opposed to, like, a bird's eye view the first time?
Yeah, and, like, there's, like, someone, like, kind of, like, throws, like, a rolling pin at him, and he jumps in the air, and he has, like, the same shot, but now he's, like, terrified. And, like, they play into a joke almost where it's, like, when a cat gets scared and, like, kind of jumps up with his spine hunched, they play into that. And so there is so much going on in this. That is just...
And we haven't even talked about, like, the jokes,
which
are, like,
the comedy
best.
is also, like, incredible. I mean, we kind of alluded to a few, but, like, the comedy is also particularly well done just altogether. And I think...
Because it also plays into the characters.
Right. I guess this also makes me want to pivot to Perito, and why I think he's been such a great character, as well as that. A lot of these, like...
I thought he was going to be annoying.
Yeah, I myself, I was like, I'm not going to care. I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to... That's what I thought.
Don't even try.
But then I did. And I do care. And I want him to thrive. But...
I do want him to thrive.
Yeah, because I think what works so well is that with most of these kids' animated movies, that's not The Last Wish, and it's not that good. It's not doing well. Is that so much of it just feels like that bass tone is always just, like, very optimistic, and there's not really that sense of, like, anything to, like, be worried about. And so you have the side character that's meant to be the support, but then it's like...
But, like, they don't really add much.
Yeah, so then, like, when things go south, like, as they are required in, like, the third act, like, you just don't care, because you're like, well, there's not really a sense. You've just been kind of an annoying person that's just been egging me on this whole time, and you're not adding anything. So that's why so many of these, like, annoying side characters are annoying, and why they have that reputation.
And it's also why I'd say, like, the fallout, and I hesitate to call it that, the fallout in this movie isn't, like, really cheap because it's still playing into Puss's fear of death.
Yes.
Like, if you were in the Cave of Lost Souls and you just, like, saw the Grim Reaper, like, I would keep on running with, like, the map. I'd be scared.
It is human. This
it makes total sense where he's coming from.
Is being one of the most human people. No, is being one of the most human people.
Man,
yeah, I've seen in such my time of like 3 years.
It's the reason why like adult animation like Velma, like can't just write off of being classified as adult.
Yeah, well,
like,
that's a different can of worms. I know.
Well, still.
It's well, on to that point, I think it's a weird kind of juxtaposition, and this is an idea it'd be interesting to maybe try to dive into further. I know I kind of shared that with you a little bit off the recording, but it's interesting because Velma and Puss in Boots: Last Wish, they both have a scene where they depict our main character going through a panic attack, and like the difference in like how they handle it and the level of respect they have for audience members is literally like the polar opposite. Because you get to Velma, and there's no build-up. You hate these characters to begin with, because that again, other can of worms. But you have no reason to really invest them. And then she has a panic attack for no justifiable reason. And then the solution is like arguably one of the worst things you could do in a situation like this, because Daphne just kisses Velma, which I mean, I'm not saying I'm an expert with panic attacks. Obviously, I want to be respectful towards this topic, but. Like, isn't that the worst thing you should do in this situation because you're just going to be overstimulating the person? Like, isn't the idea to help try to calm them down in ways that you can? Of sorts?
I don't know.
I mean, again, not an expert.
You need a good stress dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Therapy dog.
But then you get a Puss in Boots, and he has a very clear reason of why this is happening, and it's presented very well done, mind you, because, like, there's that shot where he's like looking at all the insane colorful action and then it turns to see the dark blue colors piercing towards him. It's very like gripping in that regard. And so, and like the way that they handle that scene is just very like burned into my brain, where it's like, it's the way they handle the sound is like, it's all like ear ringing in that heartbeat. And you have that, like you have just that one audible cue to really go off of. But then, and to see them like act in this way, and it's done purely visually. Like Perito runs in and he sees what's going on in this situation, but instead of trying to overtalk, like he says a couple lines and like he doesn't even say that many lines. He just says, "What's wrong?" Like he's clearly expressing this concern and this, he's just clearly, tripped up over here. He's getting concerned over this person that he's been working with, and all he does is he offers comfort, and that plays into him wanting to be a therapy dog, and it's into his character. And then what makes it a lot better is that we don't just brush over it, but this is a pivotal character moment. Like, this is the first time we see Puss not be some legend or, like, some guy that's trying to, like, save the day. He opens up. We learned this, like, they allude to this trouble with him and Kitty about Santa Coloma, and he opens up about how it was the first time he felt feared. He's being vulnerable. And then Perito is there to support him. And then Kitty overhears this, and it's a moment of growth for her, too. Because she realizes that it clearly wasn't him, like, just trying to stand her up and being this selfish person. But he had a moment of weakness. And he recognized it. And he addressed it.
And, like, he actually feels bad about it.
He clearly
wants to apologize.
Like, he's being a person. He's being someone we can connect with. This is what a movie should be.
It really goes to show that, like, animation as we interpret it is really just a mindset. Like it's not... You don't have to be Family Guy to be adult or mature.
Yeah, I know that...
It really does start and end at, like, what you choose to do.
Yeah, I mean, it plays into that mindset where there's clearly... Like, I think so many people just don't have much respect for animation. That's why, like, air quotes adult animation is just, like, a conga line of just like crude jokes that get written like a couple of minutes. But then like obviously I think there are people that do have that respect, like Guillermo del Toro, Pinocchio movie. He loves to say animation's a medium, it's not just a genre. Like, and he shows that respect. And obviously
he took the animation medium and like crafted
more, still that Pinocchio movie, there's a lot of good craft in that. There's a lot of great design.
Still very mature, yeah.
He wants to block it and he wants to really explore that medium. And that's very respectable. And then, like, you have something like The Smiling Friends, which is, like, a fun comedy show that takes time to actually want to craft its jokes and actually have this like background and this passion that wants to have it be done. And I think I'd like to think that there's going to be more people in the future that are going to be far more. They're going to have a lot more respect and really want to uphold and want to use animation. I'd like to think that at least. Like, there's going to be more people that want to show that. And I think
audience members have always been like more recognizing of that, but like it's like the executives and the studios that have been the most reluctant to follow through with that.
You gotta make money, and like you can churn out like dumb crap movies like Ugly Dolls or some dumb stuff like that. Like you can sucker in as many people, because like when you have these animated movies, when you look at it from like a price standpoint, if you could sucker in a kid, you're also suckering in at least one parent, so that's double the ticket price. And then if you take like a family, so obviously. Like, there's why, when it comes to the business side, that's why it's really sad, because the more, like, darker, air quotes, cynical side, when it comes to, like, Hollywood, is that it's just being opportunistic and just capitalizing on a profit. But when you have someone like Joe Crawford and everyone on this team that is making Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and they want to actually, like, leave something, and they want to make a movie, and you have someone that knows how to make that movie, yeah, no wonder it's going to be like an absolute mega hit. Like, why do you think everyone online has been loving this movie again? Just look at how it's been doing.
And my hope is that with like all the recognition and success this movie has received, we'll see more of this going forward.
It's more of a snowball.
I'm hoping for like Kung Fu Panda 4, like they'll be seeing like daring movies like this that are like stylistic and more inquisitive as to like the foundation of their characters and like examining like what they do and why they do it and like crafting worthwhile themes. Like I'm hoping like executives will see that like that can work and like we'll be getting more of that trend. The key here is to like you as an audience member play a role in this. It's important that like
you vote with
if
your
you take
wallet,
anything
basically.
away from this, it's important that like you have a standard and a baseline that's higher than the one that we already have, because only through that will we be able to get more of The Last Wish and everything that it stands for.
I know, and it can like, I know it's tricky because there can be situations where you don't support something, but it still makes a crap ton of money, like BVS or say any Phase 4 Marvel movie, because that's how it works. But yeah, I think showing support in ways like these are going to be able to
be cognizant. Think about that.
Yeah, and I mean, I like to think that Spider-Verse was the one that really got the ball rolling, because
it was. Yeah,
I think we hadn't had. There wasn't really some big animated movie that really kind of shook the
ground.
Like
Sony did like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and Hotel Transylvania, which were like movies that were animated differently.
But, yeah. But like
they weren't like Spider-Verse animation.
Spider-Verse really kind of opened up the public's eye, I'd like to think, and really kind of showed how much you could get away with a big mainstream movie. And I think every now and then we're going to keep getting that one movie every so often. Maybe not every year per se, but we're going to get one on a relatively frequent basis, I'd like to think. And I just think Puss in Boots: The Last Wish has been that next movie.
Yeah, so here's hoping we see more of this DreamWorks renaissance.
That's an interesting point. I see people have been saying like DreamWorks is entering this golden age of sorts, and so
time will tell. Yeah, we only have one.
I'll be honest,
amazing one so far.
A guy that loves this movie so much, I'm not fully on board yet, and that's not because of The Last Wish, not at all. If it was purely based on The Last Wish, I'd be 110% on board. But I think we just got to see how it's panning out, because I think if they keep doing
like Universal era DreamWorks, like we've gotten stuff all across the board, like Boss Baby 2 and then Puss in Boots 2.
And so I think it's just because next is Trolls 3, and so if that ruins all the goodwill, that's why I'm not jumping on board. But I think if they do some good visual work or really have an idea of what they want to do, I think we could really see DreamWorks really start to step things up, and especially again Kung Fu Panda 4. Because I think you told me it's the same team, so if they're going to go for a very similar idea, like, this movie, this might be a big golden age and a big change for animation.
This is why Croods 2 is one of the most important movies of all time, because it was Joel Crawford's first DreamWorks project, and it allowed we should thank the Croods 2, is what I'm saying. Thank you, Croods 2.
I will thank the Croods 2 for giving me this movie. You act like I didn't like Croods 2 to begin with, but
epic movie, Croods 2 for the win.
But
love that. Last Wish is better,
it is.
But you know
it's a 10 out of 10. I don't know what I gotta do to I don't want to go like so crazy. It's like it's a perfect movie. Like I really want more time to sit on this, and like who knows if this is like gonna like suddenly get dropped out, and I have like other movies I like more apparently. But this, above all else, this has been one of the most revitalizing movies I've seen. It's just I don't want to act like I've done this forever. It's only been a couple of years for me since I've started movie watching, but I have rarely, if like the way this connects with me has rarely been topped. Like that's why it's only with La La Land, and that's why I'm saying this thing can like rival it almost, because I haven't had a movie that I've been this like dedicated towards, this like thinking about, this like mindful of, that I think about on a frequent basis than I have with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Crazy as that may be, but this thing is This thing is just etched in my brain. This is a favorite movie. This
paying zero rent.
Yeah, no, it could show up to my house right now and I would let it in. I would fully allow it. It is what I want in a movie. And I am so thankful and I'm so grateful that I got to watch this. And I get to watch this.
You were alive when it came out.
Wow. Wow. Whew. Yeah.
We did it. I think that's our longest movie that we've talked about, too. That might be it.
Second favorite. I mean, completely deserved.
I know where this is going on your private screening list, and
It's gonna go fourth. I mean, I kind of like doing a little bit better, but
yeah. What are you gonna do?
But
all right. Well,
yeah.
I don't think we have anything else for this episode. We covered some Oscar movies.
I mean, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish will not win Best Animated Feature.
No, unfortunately, but you know, it was. Pinocchio wouldn't be the worst choice either.
But it's not like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio winning is not something that's going to like infuriate me. Like, it's another fine movie. I can see why it's picked.
If nothing else, it's another good step for animation in the West.
It's understandable. I can see why. It's justifiable. It's not my pick, but it's a fine pick.
It's good.
As long as it's not Sea Beast or Turning Red, like I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be fine.
I'm fine with Turning Red winning.
But yeah, I mean, we'll see the Oscars.
Domishi, let's go.
We'll see the Oscars. I mean, who knows if there's going to be something crazier, if it's going to be the most boring Oscars ever, but yeah.
Grant's going to tune back in and it's going to be the most boring Oscars ever.
It's all contingent on me and my presence.
Now,
it's just it's the joke.
So if I can get you, if I can get you to not show up, then I'll be treated to some good entertainment. But I think
what if you don't show up and only I watch it?
Ooh, and
then we see how
that's
it plays
an experiment.
out.
Maybe we should try it. Okay. Maybe it's one or the other.
Yeah, well,
I want our next episode. I want our next episode to be the Mario movie.
The Mario movie. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's gonna be the main event.
That's at least 2 months, but I'm sure we can find some.
We got it.
Yeah. I mean, we've lost a whole year of episodes. We've gone through some things, so
we might as well pick up.
Yeah. So, it makes sense.
All right.
But yeah. So.
With that,
yeah, I hope you stuck around for that discussion. I really like that third movie.
Thank you. Yes, for sticking around. And
thanks for watching. So.
Live life. Yeah.
See ya.
Appreciate it. See ya.